Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Naruto is a prodigy and is very similar to his father Minato. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Leave a comment if you want to suggest fanfic. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let us begin. Chapter 15. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, thankful for the dimness of the room. He lay off on the bed, staring into nothing and thinking of nothing, and cleared all the sleep from his eyes. Sitting up, he was happy to find that he no longer felt exhausted and tired like yesterday evening. In fact, he could say with certainty that aside from having chakra control problems, he was in top physical condition. Looking around the room, he saw his two teammates sprawled out on their beds. Like him, they hadn't bothered to change or freshen up, they had probably fallen out a little after him. He took the opportunity to hit the shower first and moved to the bathroom. 20 minutes later, he was clean and fresh in a new pair of clothes and Sasuke and Sakura were just beginning to stir when he walked out of the bathroom. He grinned at their half-sleepy forms. "Hey guys," he exclaimed a bit too loudly. He grinned a bit more when they just grumbled angrily. No one liked loud noises in the morning. He chuckled, "Anyways, I'm heading off to breakfast in the canteen. The bathroom's free if you want it." He walked to the door and just when he was about to open it when he turned and smirked, "I don't know if the hot water is limited or not." Sasuke and Sakura froze for a moment and for a moment, they just sat like that. Sasuke was the first to snap out of it and was about to rush into the bathroom when the door was knocked, causing the two genin to pause momentarily. If Naruto had not been a censor, he would have probably slapped an explosive tag on the door and backed away. However, he sensed two familiar chakra signatures outside. Kakashi-sensei and Gigi. Didn't know they would come this early. Then again, this is Orochimaru we are talking about, he mused as he opened the door. Hiruzen and Kakashi's serious faces greeted him on the outside. Behind him, Sakura and Sasuke also tensed up for a second before relaxing. Naruto wordlessly stepped aside to let them through and closed the door behind them. Hiruzen turned to Naruto and said in a tone that unconsciously caused Naruto to straighten his back. "Iruka said that you encountered Orochimaru in the forest." Naruto nodded just as seriously, "Hi, Hokage-sama." He then recounted everything, beginning from the time when they first encountered him. How he was forcefully separated from his team, how he and Sasuke teamed up to take him down and failed spectacularly. "I don't know what happened after I was knocked out, but I can take a guess," he said, glancing at Sasuke, who tensed up. Hiruzen and Kakashi both knew very well that when Naruto said that he could guess something, it was something worth witnessing. Naruto never guessed anything, he always observed and when he had gathered his facts, he connected them in such a way that it was hard to argue with him when he had presented his deduction. Seeing Gigi's and Kakashi's anticipating looks, he continued. "I woke up a day after I was knocked out. I was mostly fine, but when I emerged from our hiding spot, I observed that we had been ambushed. An unconscious Lee was in the clearing. When I observed Team 10's faces, they positively did not know when Lee had come, which meant Lee had arrived before Team 10 came to our aid. He was knocked out when I saw him. But," he said, glancing at Sasuke, who was staring at him with a neutral face, something was wrong with Sasuke. He didn't mince his facts. The whole room turned to face Sasuke, who had adopted a scowl. Naruto continued his explanation, "I felt a strange chakra emanating from him. It felt very evil, for the lack of a word. It also caused him to become extremely ruthless while under its effects. What's more dangerous is that the feeling of that chakra was quite similar to what I felt from Orochimaru." Both Hiruzen and Kakashi had wide eyes at what had happened. Naruto seemed not to notice their shock as he still continued speaking. He was covered in strange black marks that were spread over the left side of his body. Judging from his euphoric and ruthless behavior, I'd say he was under the effects that are quite similar to when shinobi receive a major boost in power. However, an accidental slip caused him to get knocked out and while it was only for a fleeting moment, I saw the marks receding to underneath his left collar. That confirmed Hiruzen's and Kakashi's worst suspicions. Hiruzen turned to Sasuke and asked, but it was more like an order, "Sasuke-kun, can you please remove your shirt for a moment?" "Hi, Hokage-sama," came the quiet response from the boy. Sasuke deftly pulled his shirt off and all the occupants in the room were wide-eyed, including Naruto, when they saw a strange mark on the left-hand side of his neck, its appearance not unlike the three tomos of Sharingan. "Oh Kami," Hiruzen breathed out. This was not good at all. Orochimaru had come into the Chunin exams and had put his curse mark on Uchiha Sasuke of all people, who was a major flight risk. Orochimaru knew that Sasuke carried a deep, revenge-fueled desire within him to avenge his clan by killing his brother. He had offered a source of power and gave a glimpse of its effects to Sasuke. Hiruzen became even more worried that Sasuke will go to Orochimaru in hopes of controlling that power. Naruto curiously asked in disgusted fascination, "What the hell is that?" He had a feeling that this was quite familiar. Hiruzen turned to Naruto. "That is the curse mark of Orochimaru. I'm sure you know of this, Naruto." He gave a knowing look that confused the others in the room. Naruto furrowed his brow in thought and it immediately came to him. Enko-sensei had showed him the same thing once on her neck. "Oh damn," he breathed out. Sasuke was starting to get irritated that the others were talking about him as if he was not even in the room. "What are you talking about?" he near snarled at the three. Naruto turned and walked towards Sasuke, pressing 2 fingers to the seal. While his sensory abilities were still blocked, being in contact with the seal negated the handicap. For a moment he just felt it out, brushing against it with a tiny amount of his chakra. He ignored Sasuke's flinch at the burn of the seal and thought for a moment on how to explain it to someone who did not even know the F of Fuinjutsu. "This seal, it might sound extremely bad on my part, but it's quite a beauty. It's so complicated, so intricate that it will take years of study to try and find a counter to it. It's like a storage seal that can only be activated by you. If I had to make a guess, judging from when I previously observed you using this seal, it has Orochimaru's chakra in it. Not exactly the same, but just enough to tell that it's similar." He laid out his analysis. Hiruzen nodded. "Very good analysis, Naruto-kun. That's exactly what it is. However, there is a risk in using it. A grave one." Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "What is the risk?" Naruto narrowed his eyes at not just Sasuke's question, but also the way he asked it. He could not say with certainty, but he almost felt like Sasuke was considering using that chakra. Naruto cut in before Gigi could speak. "In the short time that you used it, it probably must have felt euphoric to you. A rush of power so potent and heightened, unparalleled by anything you've felt ever before. Am I wrong?" He pinned Sasuke with a stare that advised him not to lie. Not that he could anyway, with Kakashi and Hiruzen keeping a close eye on him. "Yeah," Sasuke answered hesitantly. Hiruzen and Kakashi were in awe of Naruto's deducing skills. If not for both of them knowing who his parents were, they would have thought he belonged to the Nara clan. Naruto picked up from his answer, almost mumbling more to himself rather than his superiors in the room. "And whatever feels to us that way, we are bound to resort using it again and again. Orochimaru must have kept this in mind when he designed the seal. Anyone who used its power would be tempted to use it repeatedly until they become dependent on its power." Turning to Sasuke, he said in a pleading tone, "Sasuke, no matter what, you have to absolutely avoid using that seal. I was told that it was nothing but a slave collar, a way for Orochimaru to make you kneel to him." Naruto carefully studied Sasuke's expression. By the end of his explanation, Sasuke looked angry that someone tried to make him dance to their tune. But underneath the anger, Naruto could see it. Sasuke was leaning towards using it when the situation gets worse. Judging by the looks on Gigi's and Kakashi's face, they had seen it too. Hiruzen spoke in a commanding tone, "We have no choice but to seal it immediately. For the good of others and your own." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "How will you seal it?" "There is only one such seal in existence and that too relies on the will of the recipient." Kakashi nodded. "I will seal it with the Fujihoin evil containment seal." "But, as Naruto said, there's a catch," he said, glancing towards Sasuke. "What is it?" Naruto took up from where Kakashi left off. "The evil containment seal is only as powerful as you want it to be. The stronger your will to resist using that chakra, better will be the effects of the seal and better will it be contained." Kakashi stepped forward. "Come, Sasuke. You can relax after the sealing is over. We must do it now." Naruto smiled slyly. "I didn't know you were versed in the delicate art of sealing, sensei." Kakashi turned with a bored eye. "I picked up a thing or two from my sensei." Taking a hold of Sasuke, who had put on his shirt, he vanished in a swirl of leaves. Hiruzen proceeded to leave as Sakura closed the door to the bathroom. Gigi, he called out. This was his chance to get his seal taken off. He lifted his shirt and jacket and molded some chakra to make his seal visible. Can you remove this seal? Orochimaru placed it on me, and I don't think I want my teammates to know about my status just yet. Hiruzen studied the seal and saw what it was. I can do it, but you better brace yourself, he warned before 5 kanji lit up on his fingers. On the count of 3. 1, he slammed the fingers onto the seal, exclaiming, Gogyo Kane. He watched with satisfaction as the seal came off. Naruto, who was unprepared and as such, fell on his butt. The 5 elements seal disappeared from on top of his seal. Naruto glared at the old man. Where was the 2 and 3, old man? Sarutobi shrugged innocently. 2, 3. All the best for the next phase. He shunshined away just in time to avoid a barrage of shuriken. Naruto grumbled in irritation, but brightened up when he felt his consciousness being prodded by a familiar presence. He closed his eyes and when he opened them, he was in the valley again, underneath the tree that Kurama enjoyed so much. The said demon was lazily lying underneath it, his tail swaying behind him lazily, but magnificently. He stared at Naruto intensely, who grinned back. Naruto walked up to Kurama's head and sat down in front of him. Are you alright, Kurama? Kurama scoffed, sending hot air from his nostrils. Such a seal can't affect me, but it did affect the seal your father placed on you. We aren't mutually inclusive. Naruto nodded in understanding. Kurama spoke. Again, by the way, nice job on trying to fight Orochimaru. You were quite efficient in your attacks, if only to compensate for your weakness. Naruto simply waved that comment away. He had gotten used to Kurama's way of complimenting a long time ago. Also, the tag team that you formed with the Uchiha was quite impressive, considering how repulsive he acts towards you. Naruto turned serious. Sasuke will do what's necessary to survive to face Itachi someday. Even if it means admitting his weakness right now and teaming up. Kurama gave a grunt to acknowledge him, but Naruto knew that Kurama could care less about Sasuke, or any Uchiha in general. Alright, I'll see you later, Kurama. Kurama nodded and settled down for a nap. Naruto then exited his mindscape and opened his eyes in the real world. Only 5 seconds had passed. Naruto smirked at the time difference, opened the door and proceeded to breakfast. XXXXXXX. The next 2 days were pretty much uneventful. Naruto did not waste the time given to them. The day the seal was removed, his chakra control came back. He was better than before, hell even his chakra pools had expanded quite a bit. Nothing interesting had happened in the 2 days, other than Naruto meeting Temari once again during breakfast. Nothing major had happened, except the two had made eye contact once and looked away quickly, both of them blushing heavily. It seemed that now that the tension of the second phase had passed, the awkwardness from the end of the first date had returned in full. They didn't meet each other again until the last day, when all the genin had assembled in an arena of sorts. They were pleased to find that all of the Konoha teams had made it, along with the Oto team as well. He already knew about the Suna team. All of the genin stood in a formation before the Sandame, who looked serious and imposing, every bit the shinobi he was known to be. He observed all the genin from under his hat, and Naruto could see none of the kindness that he was usually known for by the people of his village. Congratulations on successfully completing the first half of the Chunin exams. You all have proven you at least have the will to become Chunin. But will is not enough by itself, however strong it may be. It's time I revealed to you the real reason why Chunin exams are held, one of the many truths you will no doubt learn later in your life, he addressed them. In reality, the Chunin exams are games of war, a representation of the conflicts between all the nations. It is a chance for hidden villages to showcase the best of their shinobi, who strive to bring glory to their homes. Other nations, all potential clients of our profession will watch the battles. Naruto tuned the rest of the speech out as he frowned in thought. Basically, what Gigi was saying is that the Chunin exams are a show of strength from the hidden villages, and they were merely pieces of the whole game. It made perfect sense to him though. The village received more missions and commerce, and in turn put more money in his pockets. He had no complaints to make as long as he was getting his due. He returned his attention to the front when Hiruzen cleared his throat. Now, I will. He trailed off when a Jonin from the lineup of all senseis behind him jumped up and appeared in front of him in a kneeling position of respect. With all due respect, Hokage-sama, please allow me, the proctor of this exam, to explain. Naruto observed the ninja carefully. The man was decently tall, bandana with metal plate attached covering the most of his brown hair save for the few in the front. The bags underneath his eyes indicated an exhausted and, if the repeated coughs were anything to go by, a chronically sick nature. The Hokage nodded and moved back to stand in front of the lineup, his eyes sharp and present. The man cleared his throat and began speaking. My name is Gecko Hayate, and I am the proctor for the third exam. We usually don't do this, but it is being done this time. He said all that before being attacked by another coughing fit. The genin muttered among themselves as they tried to figure out the reason for the preliminary round. Shikamaru called out in irritation, what? Why do we have to go through a troublesome round like this? Like Hokage-sama explained, there will be people coming to watch this. Important people such as the royalty, businessmen. We want them to have a good time watching the fights. We didn't anticipate on this many people remaining after the second round. So for the best fights, the best fighters would be chosen. That being said, the rounds will start immediately, so if you don't feel your best, you can drop out right now. Your teammates won't be disqualified if you drop out, he explained. A hand rose up from the crowd, which Naruto identified belonging to one Yakushi Kabuto, the genin they had met back in the exam room. I forfeit. I have almost no chakra left. Kabuto said. Hayate nodded, always good to know your limits. You can leave. Kabuto nodded and walked away. Naruto's eyes narrowed in suspicion. He could easily sense chakra levels, and Kabuto's was almost full. In fact, he had more chakra than any genin assembled, barring Naruto himself. Naruto saw Ibiki speaking to the Hokage, who nodded. Nothing more, he turned his gaze back front. Speaking of sensing, Naruto's gaze shifted and landed on one of the Jonin from Oto. His chakra was as normal as any of the Jonin, but the very familiar maliciousness in his chakra gave him away. He was the only Jonin who had such a feeling to his chakra. Not to mention, he failed to disguise his eyes. Naruto heard Kurama snigger as he thought, is Orochimaru an idiot or what? I'm surprised those snake-like eyes haven't been caught by Gigi yet. He turned his gaze away just before Orochimaru faced his direction. Naruto kept his cool, knowing that he wasn't the target of Orochimaru's stare. Hayate explained that now that the number of genin was even, they will now have 10 one-on-one matches. The victors will proceed to the final stage of the Chunin exams. He explained all the regular rules of an authorized shinobi fight and started the matches. All the teams and senseis went up to the balconies. Foreigners on the right and Konoha on the left. They all turned to the screen to see names flashing by, before they stopped on the first two. Akado Yoroi vs Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto rose an eyebrow. Looks like you're first, Sasuke. All the best, he wished the boy luck, but it wasn't said genuinely. Honestly, it was getting harder and harder to trust Sasuke now. Enko had once told him that the cursed mark brought out the worst, the truest part of you. Naruto had taken a glimpse at the real Sasuke back in the forest, a maniac who would do anything for power, even kill his own. He had no love for his own people. Naruto watched as Sasuke went down. Sasuke was his comrade and as such, he would protect his comrades with his life, as was his duty. But to Naruto, that's all what Sasuke was to him right now. A comrade, nothing more. There was no friendship, no trust between them as of now. Sasuke officially lost them when he chose to use the tainted power and attack him with the intent to at least fatally injure him. Naruto would be wary of Sasuke now. Back in the arena, Hayate raised his hand before shouting. Hajime. Yoroi placed his hands in a seal, let's do this. Naruto closely paid attention to the match. After Yoroi had placed his hands in a seal, his left hand had begun to emit a blue aura of chakra as he took off in a sprint towards Sasuke. Sasuke, for his part, simply stood still with his Sharingan active. I thought he wouldn't be able to use the Sharingan without being affected by the cursed seal. But no matter, I will win anyway. Yoroi panicked at first, then relaxed, continuing his assault. As soon as Yoroi threw his hand forward, Sasuke blocked it. However, he was shocked when he could feel his chakra leaving him. I have the ability to absorb another person's chakra through my jutsu. You don't have a chance, Yoroi said smugly. Sasuke grit his teeth and immediately lashed out, forcing Yoroi to disentangle from him. Sasuke stood at a distance, breathing heavily. He had deactivated his Sharingan. Damn it. I was too careless. I can't afford to lose any more chakra. I have to finish this fast, or I risk exhaustion from his jutsu, he thought furiously. Yoroi gazed at Sasuke, feeling smug about his apparently easy victory. However, that feeling soon disappeared when Sasuke seemed to disappear as well, right in front of his eyes. However, the Jonin and Naruto saw that Sasuke had just moved incredibly fast, crouching in front of Yoroi and delivering a kick to the boy's jaw. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That cannot be his speed. He was that fast only with the power of the curse mark. But that kick, Sasuke copied Lee, didn't he? Not bad at all. Yoroi was sent flying with the force of the kick. When Sasuke appeared below him, Yoroi instantly recognized the maneuver as the shadow dance. He had no time to be shocked at all. Shishi Renden. Sasuke executed a devastating 3-hit combo, with the last hit involving smashing Yoroi into the ground with such force that the boy was knocked out instantly. Sasuke stood back, breathing heavily and a scowl on his face. I can't believe I was pushed so far by this guy. I should have been able to defeat him no time at all. Hayate checked if Yoroi was knocked out. When he was, he stood up and announced Sasuke's victory. Ino and Sakura cheered loudly at the victory, and even Kakashi cracked a smile. But Naruto was standing with a neutral expression, just looking at Sasuke and replaying the fight in his head. He copied Lee's techniques back when they were fighting. That Sharingan, quite a useful way to learn techniques, he speculated. Then he looked at Lee, who looked a bit downcast. I guess that's how everyone feels when they have all their hard work copied by the Sharingan in just a blink. I'll have to be careful from now on. Sasuke might just be looking for opportunities to use the Sharingan on me, he thought. The rest of the fights that followed were quite interesting. The next fight was Shino versus Zaku. According to Naruto, Shino won in a true shinobi fashion. Zaku could only use one arm, but he almost got Shino with his attack Zankuaha. But despite being hurt, Shino was able to trap Zaku with his Kikaichu in a checkmate. The bugs had actually stuck inside the holes of Zaku's arms, rendering them completely useless and making it a victory for the Aburame. The next match was Kankuro vs Tsurugi, the genin from Kabuto's team. The match was very short. Tsurugi could contort his body, his arms and limbs getting longer and trapping Kankuro in his grasp. At first, it seemed that Kankuro's neck was snapped, but it just turned out to be the puppet, while the real Kankuro was the one in the bandages. He turned the tables on Tsurugi and trapped his in the grasp of his puppet, breaking several of his bones. Tsurugi lost the match and Kankuro was declared victorious. The next match was Sakura vs Ino. Honestly speaking, the fight was quite pathetic. It was nothing more than two fangirls fighting, though this time Sakura was more focused on her fight rather than just impressing Sasuke. She managed to land many hits on Ino before Ino allowed her anger to take over. In an impulsive action, she cut her own hair, trying to show her resolve. Naruto just shook his head, feeling secondhand embarrassment on behalf of them. This is what ninjas of Konoha are supposed to be. The previous Hokages must be rolling in their graves. Both of them just knocked each other out. Kakashi went down to pick Sakura up, while Asuma picked Ino up. Naruto was honestly torn in his feelings about the next match. He didn't know whether to ogle Temari and admire her, or to feel bad about his fellow Konoha genin, Tenten. The matchup for Tenten couldn't have been worse. All the weapons that Tenten threw at Temari were effortlessly blown away by the other girl. Naruto shook his head. Tenten overly relied on her weapons and that was a glaring weakness. Without her weapons, Naruto doubted she knew any elemental jutsu. Tenten's final move, which was throwing all her weapons at Temari, was as useless as Naruto predicted. All her weapons were thrown back at her. Tenten flew up in the air, and was about to land on the ground when another swipe of Temari's fan sent the girl rolling on the ground, unconscious surrounded by her weapons. Lee seemed to take Tenten's defeat quite personally, and felt that Temari was a bit too harsh. He moved to attack Temari, who just blocked the attack with her fan. The world of the shinobi is harsh, Lee. What Temari-san did was actually quite mild, Gai-sensei said in a solemn tone as he guided Lee back upstairs. Tamari scoffed at Lee and turned to go back upstairs, when she stole a glance at Naruto. He was looking at her with a warm smile, silently mouthing his congratulations with a wink. She blushed and looked away from him, walking back to her brothers. The next match was Shikamaru vs Kin, a genin of the Sound team. Naruto actually enjoyed watching his friends match. Shikamaru's intellect never failed to surprise him. She used needles tied with bells towards Shikamaru, who figured she would throw one with the bell and one without the bell to confuse him. She threw more bells, all dodged by Shikamaru. But he was shocked to hear a bell behind him. Turned out she used a type of genjutsu based on sound, disorienting him. After a little struggle on his part, Shikamaru managed to trap her in her shadow imitation technique. He threw a shuriken at her, causing her to do the same and dodged, but the wall was in her way and she was easily knocked out. All in all, it was a great match. Shika can go far if he focuses a bit more on the versatility of his techniques instead of just relying on the clan techniques, he thought with a smirk. He nodded to the guy, congratulating him on the match, but the boy just muttered troublesome and walked away. It was finally his turn. And his match was against Kiba. Naruto just sighed at the matchup, whereas Sakura and Kakashi seemed to wince. Even Sasuke felt his eye twitching. Kiba was in for a rough time. Ha! We got lucky, Akamaru. Kiba gloated, jumping down into the arena. Akamaru gave an enthusiastic bark of agreement. Naruto also jumped down into the arena. Now was the time to show a little of what he was capable of. Kiba didn't know of his true strength like his own team and Team 10, so he was likely to be underestimated. On the other hand, Kiba was likely to stick to clan techniques. This was a great opportunity to learn Kiba's ways of fighting. He wouldn't be revealing anything significant of his own. Naruto stood across from Kiba as Hayate stood between them. Kiba smacked his right fist into his other palm. Hey, I feel bad for you, Naruto. I'll end this in just one punch. Naruto showed no reaction at that. In fact, the Konoha Jonin except Kakashi were quite unnerved at the lack of reaction from the resident prankster of Konoha. His face was devoid of expression, eyes giving nothing away. It reminded them too much of a certain missing Uchiha. Hajime. Naruto did not bother falling into a stance. First, he would let Kiba do all the work, showing him all his techniques. He was not disappointed when Kiba underestimated him and dashed forward in low Chunin speed, after getting on all fours, an elbow on the way to get buried in his gut. Kiba grinned savagely when he neared Naruto. He doesn't stand a chance against me. However, that thought was thrown out of the window when Naruto sidestepped at the last second. Kiba was going too fast to stop, so he just went past him. Naruto grabbed Kiba's jacket from behind and threw him back towards Akamaru. Kiba grunted as he landed on his back, managing to flip up after the landing. Naruto just stood there, arms at his sides. He called out, "Don't give less than your best, Kiba. Or you won't even stand a chance of winning." Up in the stands, Kurenai frowned and turned towards Kakashi. Kakashi, your genin is being quite cocky, despite being the dead last of his batch. Kakashi nodded, he has every right to be. Kurenai scoffed and turned back to the fight. Kiba will thrash him, Kakashi. Naruto is no match for his speed. She missed the entirety of Team 7 wincing. If only you knew, they collectively thought. She was about to be proven wrong. Down in the arena, Kiba was scoffing. I don't need my best attacks to beat you, Naruto. However, Naruto was no longer in front of him. His eyes, along with all the Jonin present, widened. He turned around in almost a whiplash and panic gripped him when he saw Naruto holding Akamaru by his front legs, the puppy whimpering in fear. Naruto's voice was as cold as his eyes, is this enough of an incentive? Kiba grit his teeth. I didn't even see him move. How is he this fast? And he's got Akamaru. Kiba didn't waste any more time. Akamaru. He tossed a pill into the open mouth of the dog. Naruto immediately dropped the puppy and retreated to a safe distance. Now I might get a warm-up, at least. He was wrong. Immediately after Akamaru had swallowed the pill, he grew larger until he was a regular-sized dog, with red fur. Akamaru dashed in a speed he did not possess earlier to Kiba's side. Kiba and Akamaru then dashed together towards Naruto, with Kiba throwing smoke bombs around Naruto. He expected Naruto to get disoriented and confused, allowing him to hit the boy easily. However, Naruto surprised everyone again when he flash stepped out of the smoke field in an instant and looked at the smoke screen intently. All the Jonin suddenly realized what Naruto was doing. He was scouting, analyzing Kiba's techniques and strategies to develop a counter-strategy. So far, Naruto had gathered quite some info on his opponent. The Inuzuka clan employs Ninken to aid in their battle. From what I have seen until now, Kiba's style is purely offensive, relying on speed and ferocity and augmented by Akamaru. His fighting style utilizes his claws. Kiba is hot-headed, plunging headfirst into this situation without any strategies, believing he can overpower me with brute force and speed. However, he employs distraction tactics when brute force does not work. The smoke bombs were to confuse me, and taking advantage of that, it would allow Kiba would land his attacks. The whole train of thought took less than a second. Naruto knew Kiba had much more to reveal. Oi, Kiba. There is no one in there, you smelly dog. Of course, Naruto meant no offense. It was purely to provoke Kiba into attacking him. With his strongest attack, revealing his trump card to all. As expected, Kiba took the bait and rushed out of the smoke screen with Akamaru, both snarling furiously. You'll pay for that, Naruto. Finally, he revealed it. He crouched on all fours again, with Akamaru climbing on his back. Giju Ninpo. Ninja art of beast mimicry, a puff of smoke revealed that Akamaru had transformed into Kiba, with both the Kiba crouched on the ground. Kurenai smirked on the railing. Seems that your student is done for Kakashi. He may be fast, but not fast enough to avoid both of them at the same time. Kakashi just smiled at her. We'll see, won't we? In the arena, both the Kibas took off towards Naruto, their speed greatly increased. However, Naruto surprised everyone present when he nimbly dodged all of their efforts to land on him. What confused the Team 7, however, that they didn't know Naruto incorporated his fighting style to be so flexible. They didn't know that Naruto had indeed incorporated the snake-style taijutsu in his own style of fighting. This continued for about 10 seconds, after which Naruto decided that Kiba was still hiding his ultimate technique. He absently dodged a Kiba by leaping into the air, thinking on how to make him reveal it. Kiba grinned when he saw Naruto leap into the air to dodge Akamaru. It was pissing him off on how easily he was dodging them. He never knew Naruto was capable of being this fast. But now he had their chance. Gatsuga. The cry snapped Naruto out of his thoughts, noticing too late the twin swirling tornadoes heading towards him in midair. He cursed for letting his concentration slip and immediately threw a kunai behind the duo before he got hit with them. Kurenai smiled in satisfaction as she saw Kiba using his strongest attack to smash Naruto into the ceiling of the arena. Your student lost, Kakashi. Might as well go and collect him, because that was Kiba's strongest attack. Naruto won't be getting up anytime soon. Kakashi smirked beneath the mask. Well, it's not over yet, Kurenai. Kurenai narrowed her eyes and looked down, eyes widening along with Asuma and Guy when they figured out what happened. Kiba stood triumphantly over the downed form of Naruto. Hey. You might be tough, but not tough enough. Gatsuga is a crippling attack, and you just The Naruto on the floor puffed into smoke, revealing just a kunai. Kiba spun around just in time to receive a blow to his stomach that sent him barreling into Akamaru. Naruto carefully kept his eyes on the real Kiba as they rolled. The next part of his plan required it. He taunted Kiba. I am getting bored, Kiba. I am finishing this now, if you don't mind. Without a seal, a shadow clone popped up beside him. I'll give you only 30 seconds. Try to knock me out, will you? With that, both of them separated, the clone going after Akamaru and Naruto facing Kiba. In the next 30 seconds, Naruto dodged 3 Gatsuga, all the while looking relaxed. He was waiting for the perfect opportunity, which arrived finally when Akamaru had to take a breath. Kiba barreled towards him with another Gatsuga, finally hitting him. The attack sent Naruto barreling into the wall on the other side, causing it to crack a little. Kiba was lightly panting as he stared at the downed form of Naruto. That'll teach you not to get me angry. However, panic gripped him for a second time in the whole fight when another puff of smoke revealed just who he had hit. Akamaru lying on the ground, unconscious and heavily injured, if the blood was anything to go by. He turned around with wide eyes to see Naruto and his shadow clone smirking, both sharing a fist bump after which the clone dispelled. The Jonin above were Dumbstruck. None had expected Naruto to substitute with Akamaru at the last second. Naruto had used a simple, but a very clever tactic to take Akamaru out of the fight. Now that Kiba was alone, the Konoha Jonin were rethinking the fact whether Kiba would be able to beat Naruto or not. Naruto said while smirking, "Now that your partner's out of the fight, it's your turn, Kiba." Kiba's eyes were wide with disbelief at how Naruto had completely turned the tables on him. Naruto, except for the punch that sent him into Akamaru, had not attacked once. Instead, he just let the fight progress, letting Kiba do the work for him and taking Akamaru out instead of himself. Naruto created 4 shadow clones that popped into existence with a half-ram seal. They all surrounded Kiba, who cursed at his situation. What happened next would be remembered by everyone. The Naruto in front of Kiba punched him fast and hard, sending him into the Naruto behind him, who roundhouse kicked him into the Naruto on his left. That Naruto spun anti-clockwise and his left leg caught Kiba in the chest, sending him backwards into the 4th Naruto, who kicked Kiba so hard in the chin that Kiba swore he felt his teeth crack as he was sent flying across the arena in an arc. Naruto then jumped across the arena himself, having timed the jump such that he was above Kiba in midair. Ha! The cry was to denote the victory in his voice rather than the application of force. Spinning to gather momentum, he sent a punishing kick to Kiba's gut that sent him crashing into the ground, creating a mini crater. He landed in a crouch a few meters away, facing away from Kiba. He already knew that Kiba had passed out from the pain. He looked over to Hayate, who was confirming Kiba's condition. Finding him to be unconscious, Hayate rose and declared, "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." The entire crowd, including Naruto's team, was speechless. The teams outside of Konoha were gaping at the blonde, who was not even out of breath. What kind of training did Konoha give to this guy? The team from Suna had varied reactions. Kankuro was slightly sweating, not because of the punishment Kiba went through, but at how effortlessly Naruto delivered it. Temari had a hand over her mouth to prevent anyone from seeing that she was gaping in amazement. She had figured Naruto was strong, but not this strong. He had finished the fight with just a shadow clone and taijutsu, not to mention he didn't use any weapons, except for the kunai which he just used for replacement. He had not given away any of his trump cards, and could dish it out hard without resorting to any of them. He wasn't even out of breath. But the reaction from Gaara was the one that worried them the most. "Uzumaki Naruto," he whispered, a crazed expression coming onto his face. "You'll prove my existence." Naruto walked up the stairs confidently, but stopped when Kurenai stepped in front of him, an incensed look on her face. "Was it really necessary for you to be so brutal?" Naruto folded his arms and replied, "I fail to see why you're so incensed." Kurenai put her hands on her hips and glared hard. "I believe, from your performance, that you were skilled enough to simply knock him out. Why didn't you?" Naruto checked in his peripheral vision that all the Konoha nin on the railing were watching in interest. Turning his attention back to Kurenai, he said, "You won't understand. Besides, there are people my age who are way stronger than me. If this were a real battle, Kiba would have been dead 100 times over in 1 minute." He wanted to say more, but held it in. He just walked away, letting Kurenai take in his words. The Konoha nin had to admit that it was true. From the looks of it, Naruto had gone extremely easy on Kiba, not even putting much effort. If he had put effort, they didn't want to think about it. And, sorry for the skip guys, but I won't be writing any more of the fights. My main focus is on Naruto, so read it like the rest of the fights went exactly like that of in canon. After the fights were finished, Hayate called out, "Will all the winners please come down to the arena floor? We have a few announcements." Sasuke, Shino, Temari, Kankuro, Naruto, Shikamaru, Neji and Gaara arrived at the arena floor as Hayate addressed them again. "Congratulations to you all. You 8 genin are the finalists that will compete in the finals of the Chunin exams in 1 month's time. It will be just how it happened today, except your opponent will be decided right now." He pulled out a small pouch filled with chits. "You will pull a number from the pouch and announce the number you have received along with your name. By those numbers you will be paired." He started with Naruto first and then went down the line. Uzumaki Naruto -1 inch, Aburame Shino -6 inches, Gaara -3 inches, Kankuro -5 inches, Hyuga Neji -2 inches, Sabaku no Temari -7 inches, Uchiha Sasuke -4 inches, Nara Shikamaru -8 inches. Hayate nodded and read from the clipboard he was carrying. The final matches will be the following. Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Neji Gaara vs Uchiha Sasuke Kankuro vs Aburame Shino Sabaku no Tamari vs Nara Shikamaru. He looked up from the board and addressed the genin. There will be 7 matches in total. The 5th match will be between the winner of the 1st and the 2nd, the 6th match will be between winner of the 3rd and the 4th, 7th between the winner of the 5th and the 6th. Sandame stepped forward at this point. Now that you know who your opponents are going to be, use the following month to prepare for the finals. Your village will be represented, so while preparing, keep that in mind. XXXXXXX. The next day, Naruto was walking at a comfortable pace to Training Ground 7, where he had sensed Kakashi. As he walked, he thought about what happened yesterday. Hinata had been pit against Neji, and it wasn't just cousin rivalry that was going on. Naruto had learned for the first time, listening to Neji talk, that the Hyuga were divided even among themselves. Hinata was the heiress of Hyuga, which meant that she was a member of the main house. Neji was a member of the branch house, and held a serious grudge against the main house, if his behavior towards Hinata was anything to go by. Naruto hadn't taken well to Neji verbally assaulting the already timid girl so much. Neji had to be stopped from landing a fatal blow to Hinata by the Jonin senseis. Naruto himself had sworn a blood oath to make Neji pay for what he did to Hinata. Maybe it was fate that they ended up being opponents. Who knows? Naruto didn't know the full story yet, but he won't be looking into it just yet. Right now, he needed to find Kakashi for his training. He leisurely walked into the training grounds and spotted Kakashi and Sasuke, both standing by the stumps. Kakashi, as usual, had his head buried in his porn while Sasuke just looked plain annoyed. He then spotted Naruto walking towards them in no hurry at all. What are you doing here? The annoyance was crystal clear in his voice. Naruto easily shrugged it off and replied. I'm sure our sensei was expecting me. After all, we both need training for the Chunin finals, he easily smiled back, further annoying the Uchiha. I was, indeed, expecting you, Naruto, Kakashi said, snapping his book shut. He regretted for what he was about to do, but it couldn't be helped. Naruto stared intently at Kakashi, straight in his visible eye. There was something going on that he did not know. Casting a bored glance at Sasuke, he couldn't find anything. Boy just looked annoyed and impatient. Impatient for what? Kakashi found it hard to stare his student in his eyes. Those eyes that were full of intelligence, but always looked bored. But now that Naruto was staring at him, trying to figure out what was going on, he didn't see Naruto. Instead he saw his sensei, who only looked disappointed at him, as if already knowing what he was about to do. Naruto stared at Kakashi, waiting for him to speak. But for some reason, the usually cool Jonin looked a tad bit uncomfortable. Naruto mentally sighed, thinking that Kakashi would need some prompting to speak. Bluntly pointing a finger towards Sasuke, he asked, why is he impatient? The question caused Sasuke's neck to snap towards him. It also caused Kakashi to finally regain his wits. Before he could speak, Naruto beat him to it. Anyways, I came to ask you to train us for the finals, Kakashi-sensei. He was careful to say, us, and not, me. You see Naruto, the thing is, I won't be training you for the finals, he said, guilt bubbling up on the inside. The level of guilt grew exponentially when he learned what his student had come to ask for. But because of who Sasuke's opponent was, he needed to train him. Naruto for his part, simply stared at Kakashi like he was stupid. Inside though, he was a bit hurt. He knew Kakashi was the only man with a Sharingan still affiliated to the village and therefore, was the best person to train the last loyal Uchiha. But that excuse became invalid the moment he chose to become a sensei. As a sensei, he had to treat all his students fairly, without playing favorites. He could understand that Sasuke needed training because of who his opponent was, but that was no excuse to ditch his other students. What about him and Sakura? Naruto's posture straightened up, and he folded his arms across his chest. Other than the fact that Sasuke is facing Gaara and only you can train him with his Sharingan, what excuse do you have this time for ditching me and Sakura? He didn't mince his words. He had laid his cards onto the table, opting to see Kakashi's hand. Kakashi flinched heavily this time. The accusation was clear Naruto's voice, and his question had hit a bullseye. What excuse did he have? He could not form an answer. Naruto watched Kakashi struggle for words and fought to keep his eyes from narrowing. He felt anger for the first time since Wave Mission, and it was smoldering. He knew that he himself had received special training before, but it was justified considering his position as the lone Jinchuriki of the village. Why was Sasuke entitled to special training? Naruto simply put his arms in his pockets and turned around. He really wasn't in the mood to hear another half-assed excuse that Kakashi would likely give to him. Don't bother answering. I can see you have no excuse, Naruto said, walking away. Kakashi decided to change the topic to at least salvage what little he could. But I did find you another sensei, Naruto. Naruto stopped, but did not turn around. If you mean the closet pervert hiding in the woods behind us, thanks but I'll pass. He was in no way training with Ebisu of all people for something as important as the Chunin exams. He had met the man when he was training Konohamaru how to use the Oiroke no Jutsu. Needless to say, he was not impressed at all. The man's chakra was barely mid-jonin, and his attitude towards him pissed him off. Before using Shunshin to go away, he said without turning around. I don't know if you know or not, but Gaara's like me, maybe even stronger, he revealed, causing Kakashi to widen his eye in shock. Naruto continued, even people like you would be hard-pressed to beat him. He flickered away, not waiting to watch the man's reaction or Sasuke's confusion. He appeared in front of the Hokage Tower, deep in his thoughts. He was sure everyone would remember what Gaara had done to Rock Lee yesterday. The guy, with his sand, had crushed Lee's hands and legs so brutally, without any hint of remorse or emotion, that even Naruto had sweat a little. Gaara was dangerous, and he himself didn't know how he would beat the guy. Kurama had told him that since the Ikibi was the weakest of all tailed beasts, he gave his host full access to his power very early, which is why Gaara was so deranged. Shukaku had been influencing Gaara ever since Gaara could talk, so it was bound to affect him some way. Naruto did not care to go through all the doors. He simply jumped up to the window, slid it open and announced, Yo Gigi. XXXXXXX Sarutobi was glaring at the paperwork before him with all the hate he could muster. He was about to start on it when he felt an exceptionally large amount of dense chakra heading towards him. He was about to stand up when he heard the familiar voice, Yo Gigi. Sarutobi blinked at the blonde perched on his window, waving casually at him. However, he detected a small amount of sadness emanating from the boy. Naruto-kun, come in. He let the boy come inside and sit in front of him. He patiently waited for Naruto to speak. Naruto deliberated how to say it, but decided that laying it out seemed the best option. I need someone to train me for the finals. He had expected the confusion on Gigi's face. Why? What happened to your sensei? Naruto managed to keep the bitterness out of his voice. He is training Sasuke for the finals. Sarutobi had been a shinobi for almost 70 years, and therefore was adept at reading the emotions of people, especially the hidden ones. So it immediately became clear to him what had happened and his eyes hardened. Kakashi promised me he would treat his students without favoritism. How dare he break that promise? I knew he would be conflicted between Obito's and Minato's legacy. He should have at least found some middle ground instead of just tossing aside Minato's legacy. He raged mentally for a few more moments before calming down. Fortunately, he did have someone excellent who could train Naruto for the finals. Very well, Naruto. I will speak to Kakashi later, but for now, I do have someone who could train you. Naruto's eyes lit up with hope. You do? Sarutobi smiled and nodded. Why, yes. He is in the village right now. Naruto looked confused for a second, but immediately grasped the meaning of that statement. A smirk spread across his lips. Is he now? Without waiting for him to respond, Naruto was gone in a swirl of leaves. Sarutobi chuckled, returning to his paperwork. He looked forward to seeing what Naruto did in the finals. Naruto immediately spread his senses, sensing every chakra signature he could. A particularly large chakra signature showed up on the outermost point of his range. Naruto smirked and ducked into an alley. After checking that no one was watching, he flashed to the location. He had put his formula around the hot springs as well. Appearing silently in a blue flash beneath the large man perched on the branch of a tree, shamelessly peeping into the women's side of the hot springs and giggling, Naruto reacted the instant he appeared, jumping up and kicking the man into the women's side of the bath. He then sat down to enjoy the show. There were definitely screams of women and the pained screams of Jiraiya filled the air. Naruto laughed heartily at the beating his godfather was going through. He had settled things with him a while ago, and had no problem making fun of the guy. He didn't stop laughing even when Jiraiya managed to leap over the fence and out of the war zone looking no worse for wear. He glared at the blonde brat on the branch, who was wheezing so hard that he fell down the branch, not even registering the fall. Jiraiya growled and was about to kick the brat when Naruto finally stopped wheezing and stood up. His face was flushed with all the laughing. That's what you get for peeping, Ero Sennin, Naruto smirked, folding his arms. Jiraiya crossed his arms in a huff. You know better than to interrupt my peeping time, Naruto, he muttered, though there was no heat in his voice. He then really looked at Naruto for the first time. He had grown well, standing over at 5 feet 2 and a well-built physique for his age. His hair was tied in his usual ponytail, and he still looked as bored and indifferent as ever. Anyways, what do you want? Naruto's expression turned serious and asked, with a hint of pleading in his voice, will you please train me for the Chunin finals? Jiraiya smirked, having already known what Naruto was going to ask. He had no problem training his godson for the finals, but he wanted to test his resolve first. What are you offering me in return of the training? Naruto gave a deadpan stare. What happened to being a respectable shinobi? The people would be mighty disappointed to learn that the mountain toad sage is a stingy old man. Jiraiya shook his head, not at all offended. I'm not talking about money. A lecherous grin spread across his face. I'm talking about your Oiroke no Jutsu. It sounds very interesting from what sensei told me. Naruto raised an eyebrow in interest. You really are just a pervert, aren't you? Wrong. Jiraiya shouted, waving a finger. I'm not just a pervert, I'm a super pervert. Naruto let a smirk across his face. Let's see you hold up against this. With a ram seal, Naruto was replaced with a naked, buxom young woman with smoke covering her most sensitive areas and her pigtails waving gently in the breeze. Is this what you were referring to, Jiraiya-sama? Naruto asked cutely with a finger on her lower lip. For a moment, he thought Jiraiya would fall over in a nosebleed. His eyes were bugged out to the max, and the man almost looked like he'd have a heart attack on the spot. But suddenly, he surprised Naruto with a two-way thumbs up, hearts replacing his eyes. That's very good. He almost crowed in praise. Alright kid, I'll train you. Great. Naruto cheered and almost released the jutsu when Jiraiya stopped him. One condition though. Jiraiya stopped him. What? You have to keep that henge on the entire time we're training. Naruto dispelled the jutsu, looking plain annoyed. You are way over the top sometimes, Ero Sennin. Don't call me that, brat. He barked, bonking Naruto on the head. Fine, I'll train you. Meet me here tomorrow, morning 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Giving a two-fingered salute, he was gone. Naruto chuckled. It was good to see his godfather after such a long time, and he was as perverted as ever. He was gone in a blue flash a moment later. XXXXXXX. The next morning he met Jiraiya at the bathhouse again. Good morning, Ero Sennin. Jiraiya grumbled, you're really stuck on that name, huh? Naruto said mildly, you have to admit though, it's oddly befitting of you. As they walked, Jiraiya explained, alright, first I need to have a measure of your current skills, so we'll go an empty ground I know a few ways away. Then after that, I'll help you set up for the things you need to work on, while I do my own work. Naruto interrupted with a dry tone, you mean peeping, don't you? Jiraiya didn't even acknowledge the question, leading them into a field with a large lake on the other side of the bushes. Jiraiya stopped in the middle of the field and turned to face Naruto. Show me what you got. Naruto asked in return, should I take off the resistance seals? Jiraiya considered it and said, start with them, then when I say so, take them off. Naruto grinned savagely. He could strike without holding back this time. The thought spiked his heart rate, adrenaline filling his veins. He shot forward in a dash, his right foot towards Jiraiya's face. It was blocked by the man, but Naruto only needed to get close. He engaged Jiraiya in an exchange of punches, kicks, palm strikes and jabs, never hitting the Sannin, but not getting hit either. He realized that Jiraiya was just getting serious, so he decided to up the game. Disengaging, he formed the snake seal. Futon. K's Gyorai no Jutsu. Wind style. Wind torpedo, a spinning ball of wind sped towards Jiraiya, who looked shocked. He knows futon. He jumped out of the way, seeing the spot he was standing on explode in wind. I would have been cut in pieces if I had gotten hit with that. He sped through his own hand seals. Ninja art. Toad oil bullet. Naruto's mind worked instinctively, knowing what set oil on flame. Kaden. Ruka no Jutsu. As soon as the fire impacted the sticky oil, it raced back towards a stupefied Jiraiya. He knows Kaden. He immediately disconnected the oil. He turned around on instinct to block the punch from the shadow clone, kicking it and causing it to dispel. However, chains of water rose up and wrapped around him in a flash. He knows Sweden as well. However, he was not allowed to dwell on it for long. A cry distracted him. Sweden. Dai Suigaden no Jutsu. Water style. Great water fang projectile. Jiraiya stared dumbstruck at the 20 feet tall spinning water drill coming from above, with Naruto holding the dog seal. The drill crashed onto where Jiraiya was being held, creating a large explosion of water. Naruto stared at the spot where Jiraiya was, a wooden log in its place. His danger sense rang true, warning him from behind. He shunpoed just in time to avoid the heel that would have sent him through trees. Jiraiya blinked when he missed. What was that? Naruto then appeared in front of him, his face not giving away anything. Jiraiya rose an eyebrow, curious as to what the blonde was up to. You're fast, Arrow Sennin. But are you faster than lightning? He added a smirk in the end. Jiraiya only had a microsecond to get confused before Naruto was covered in red lightning of all things. Since the whole area was covered in water from Naruto's earlier jutsu, it acted as the medium for the lightning to race towards Jiraiya. Jiraiya was obviously not faster than lightning, so he grunted when he was electrocuted. It only lasted for a moment, after which Naruto landed a direct kick in Jiraiya's gut, sending him flying backwards on his behind. Honestly speaking, the fight should have been over by now. Naruto didn't need to let up the lightning, otherwise Jiraiya would have been finished by now. But Naruto watched dispassionately as Jiraiya crumbled. He flipped back to avoid his face from meeting the ground. Jiraiya grinned as he watched Naruto settle into a strange fighting stance. He's fast, and his taijutsu style is something I've never seen, but it had elements of the snake style. He hits hard and fast, even with the weights. His instincts are excellent, and he doesn't let his guard down even for a moment. He knows 4 nature transformations and he is pretty well versed in them, considering he used 3 of them with only 1 or 2 seals and the lightning without a seal. He almost had me there, if I hadn't substituted at the last second. A Jonin would be hard-pressed to beat him right now. Alright brat, seals. Off. He felt a little nervous at the grin that appeared on his godson's face, but shook it off. This time, he took the initiative, dashing forward towards Naruto. However, he was once again surprised just how fast Naruto was. His speed was easily high Jonin, with the reflexes to match. Jiraiya was hard-pressed to find an opening the fight. He was forced onto the defensive when Naruto took out 2 kunai, held them in a reverse grip, and channeled wind chakra, causing the kunai to look like blue daggers. He was on the defense for a while before he managed to disengage with the help of an earth spike, sending Naruto back. Naruto threw the kunai midair with deadly accuracy, which Jiraiya avoided by the skin of his teeth. Naruto landed and looked at him, and Jiraiya had to admit he was more than a bit unnerved at the grin Naruto was showing. Naruto then took out 2 exploding tags between fingers of both hands, held them in a cross and threw them such that they were on either side of Jiraiya, who scoffed. If you think 2 explosive tags can take me out, think again. But then he cursed and jumped back, because somehow, the tags were multiplying. Gojo Kibaku Fuda. Naruto exclaimed. A series of successive explosions shook the area. When the smoke cleared, as expected, Jiraiya wasn't there. He spread out his senses, but it seemed Jiraiya had a way to block himself from sensor-type ninjas. He sniffed the air, looking for the distinctive smell of oil, but other than in the clearing, it was nowhere. But he wasn't out of his options just yet. He still had yet to reveal his trump card. Hiraishin. Jiraiya may have been able to block himself from his senses, but Naruto could always sense where he had placed his jutsu shiki. Along the course of the fight, Naruto had placed his formula on the ground in multiple spaces. All of them were in his vision, all except one. Jiraiya in a tree 50 feet behind Naruto. Naruto wasted no time in flashing. Jiraiya closely observed Naruto while under a jutsu that prevents anyone from sensing him. He is good, better than what Minato was at his age. He's faster than most of the Jonin that I know. What is that technique, though? It seemed like a short-ranged shunshin, but not the shunshin. Those explosions though, how did he create those? The tag multiplied into copies, but the explosive power didn't diminish one bit. It was a truly ingenious seal. He is easily mid to high Jonin level. But now that the enemy is hidden, what will you do next, Naruto? He was flabbergasted, however, when Naruto disappeared in a blue flash. Naruto grinned as he connected a solid kick to the real Jiraiya's cheek for the first time in the fight, sending him flying through two trees and straight back into the clearing. Jiraiya flipped onto his feet, ignoring the pain completely and staring open-mouthed at Naruto, who used his shunshin-like technique to appear in front of him. He didn't get a chance to finish as Naruto disappeared in a blue flash again, appearing right in front of Jiraiya and punching him in the cheek. Jiraiya staggered back, clutching his tender jaw. Naruto disappeared again, reappearing behind Jiraiya in less than a second. A double palm thrust sent Jiraiya flying straight into the path of a tree. However, he already knew what he wanted to know. Jiraiya easily landed sideways onto the tree, then jumping down. He stared at Naruto in shock, who was smirking. His voice was barely above a whisper, "You mastered the Flying Thunder God." Naruto nodded, still smirking. He kept smirking when Jiraiya chuckled, which progressed into deep bellowing laughs. He hadn't had this much fun in a fight since Minato. He calmed down and stared at Naruto with a grin. "Kid, you could beat most Jonin with what you have right there," he remarked, and his opinion of Naruto only rose higher when he replied. "True, but there is always room for improvement," Naruto conceded. He still wanted to improve. He was still only 13 years old, so he had a lot of room for improvement left. Jiraiya asked with some hope in his voice, "Naruto, how would you like to become my apprentice?" Naruto's eyes lit up. "Really?" Jiraiya nodded with a smile. He would make a damn good shinobi out of this kid, even stronger than Minato. Naruto jumped up in joy. "Yata." Naruto looked at Jiraiya with his blue eyes shining. "Does that mean?" He didn't even finish his question when a scroll appeared in Jiraiya's hands, offering it to Naruto. Naruto opened the scroll and his eyes softened when he saw the name of the latest Toad summoner. "Dad." His eyes moistened as he rubbed them. He took out a kunai and cut his right thumb. Just as he was about to sign on it, Kurama stopped him. "Wait, Naruto." Naruto's thumb stopped short of the scroll, brow furrowing in confusion with Jiraiya. He looked over to Jiraiya, pointing towards his stomach and then to his mind. Jiraiya's eyebrows rose disbelievingly. "The Kyuubi is speaking to you." Naruto nodded absently as he put his thumb in his mouth. "What is it, Kurama?" "Don't sign the contract," the fox rumbled. Naruto rose an eyebrow in challenge. "Why not? They are powerful." What he heard next caught him off guard. "The fox contract is even more powerful." Naruto couldn't help but blurt it out. "You want me to sign the fox contract?" Jiraiya's eyes widened. "There is a fox contract." He couldn't believe that the Kyuubi of all beings was trying to persuade Naruto to sign a contract that was the same as its species. He watched as Naruto's face cycled through different expressions. First shock, confusion, challenging, speculation, agreement, and finally resignation. Naruto sighed. "Kurama wants me to sign the fox contract, Arrow Sennin." "Kurama." Naruto gave him a look. "The Kyuubi has a name, you know. And he won't accept me signing any other contract than that of the fox." He looked up to Jiraiya with worried eyes. "Does that mean I won't be able to become your apprentice?" Jiraiya was frowning, and that only fueled Naruto's worry. "Are you friends with Kurama?" Naruto looked confused as to why Jiraiya was asking this question, but nodded. Jiraiya then surprised Naruto by chuckling. "No worries, Naruto," he declared. "You might not become a Toad summoner or apprentice, but you will still be my apprentice. Who knows, you might even become a better summoner than me one day." Jiraiya was deeply hurt and sad that Naruto won't be able to become a Toad summoner like him or Minato. But he really didn't want to antagonize the demon fox residing inside Naruto, not to mention the prophecy that the Toads gave him. The key to Naruto's seal was with the Toad clan, so Jiraiya was the only one who can give it to him now. He hates toads. Jiraiya blinked, snapping out of his thoughts. "What? Naruto ignored Kurama's enraged yells. He doesn't want to be associated with toads. The reason he explained for a long time how foxes are superior to toads in every way is because he can't be upfront about his feelings. Jiraiya was finding it hard not to chuckle, lest the Kyuubi forcefully send some chakra into Naruto in an attempt to kill him. The aspect of Kurama he just learned, it was surprisingly human. He figured it was fair reason for Naruto not signing the toad contract. But that left a problem. Where will you find the fox contract though? Naruto answered, Kurama told me that for shinobi to use summoning jutsu successfully, they have to have a contract with an animal. But if a shinobi performs the summoning jutsu without a contract, they will be transported to the realm of the animal they are most suited to have a contract with. Jiraiya remembered with a grimace when he had tried to do the same and ended up on Mount Myoboku. That's true. Naruto shrugged, then I will do the same, but my case is a bit special. Due to having Kurama, a fox demon inside me, I automatically qualify to become a fox summoner. So performing the jutsu will take me straight to the fox realm. Jiraiya thought over it a bit. It was a sound theory, but if it didn't work, Naruto would have no way to come back. What if doesn't work? Naruto blinked then winced. Kurama doesn't like other people questioning his intelligence. Jiraiya paled, but nodded and told Naruto the hand signs. You perform the hand signs boar, dog, bird, monkey and ram and slam your hand onto a surface. That's the gist of it. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram. Naruto made each hand seal slowly, his anticipation clear for Jiraiya to see. As soon as he completed the sequence, Naruto slammed his hand on the ground. A sealing array, which Naruto guessed was a contract seal, erupted and he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Jiraiya exhaled a sigh and sat down, waiting for his godson to return. XXXXXXX Naruto appeared in the realm of the foxes, shaking his head at the sight dizziness. The sensation of traveling was not unlike Hiraishin. He heard Kurama's voice in his head, which was filled with the emotion one goes through when they come back home. Welcome to Kitsune no Kuni, Hiwa no Oka. The Hills of Peace. Naruto gazed awestruck at the realm of the foxes. It was the most beautiful place Naruto had ever seen, so exotic that it felt like the true symbolization of nature. It looked very much like a hill station, but instead of houses, a number of caves were on each hill. There were 5 hills in total, leading up to a huge mountain, the top of which was among the clouds. The place was so full of ambience that Naruto had unknowingly sat down just to admire the beauty of the place. He had never felt this close to nature ever before. Naruto had never seen so many foxes in one place before. Beautiful, isn't it? Kurama spoke in a soft tone, well as soft his rumbling voice could become. Naruto agreed in an equally soft voice, afraid that if he spoke above a whisper it would shatter the peace of the place. Yeah. He just kept gazing at the valley, a soft smile on his face, not even noticing that a brown fox had spotted him and alerted the others. A snarl interrupted his thoughts and he found himself gazing at around 15 snarling foxes of different colors, who looked not the least bit friendly. Naruto unconsciously straightened up while sitting Indian style, making eye contact with the lead, silver fox. He didn't mask himself, instead, he revealed who he truly was through his eyes. The fox stopped snarling, and adopted what looked like curiosity on his face. He looked into Naruto's eyes for several moments, Naruto not flinching away for even a moment. Who are you, human? The smooth tenor surprised Naruto only for a second, but he recovered. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. May I know yours? Best to be polite rather than hostile. Osamu, came the reply. What are you doing here, Uzumaki Naruto? Naruto didn't know whether his answer would infuriate Osamu or not, but it would be unwise to lie. Foxes are extremely clever creatures. I was told to come here by Kurama to sign the contract of the foxes. He gulped when he saw Osamu's face twisting, revealing his sharp teeth. It did not help that Osamu was almost as tall when Naruto was standing. You have some nerve, addressing the Lord of Foxes by his name, without an honorific no less. Naruto spoke before he would be forced to defend himself, because he lives inside me. Osamu blinked, not understanding Naruto's statement at first. But when he realized what it meant, his face twisted into a snarl once again and he got into an attack position. Why you, stop. A simple command from a soft voice caused all the foxes to turn around. Naruto found himself gazing at a regal-looking red fox. The voice was obviously female, filled with power and superiority but at the same time, a warm and comforting tone. She looked beautiful. The red fox strode towards Naruto, assessing him with her gaze. The foxes parted for her and soon she was looking down at Naruto. Stand up, Naruto-kun. Naruto blinked at the soft tone, but did as she said. Soon, his eyes were level with the red female fox. She gazed into his eyes for a moment, then spoke. We have been waiting for you, Naruto-kun. Naruto rose a puzzled eyebrow, waiting for me. The red fox smiled and said, come, we have much to talk about. She turned around and from the way everyone bowed to her, she must be a pretty important fox around here. He walked after her as she led the way. I understand Kyuubi-sama told you to come here. Why yes, he did. The red fox chuckled, no need to be afraid, Naruto-kun. You are one of us now. Or you will be after you sign the contract. Naruto then spoke, his confidence returning but still being cautious. I never did get your name, Kitsune-sama. The female fox chuckled, that's because I never told you. My name is Naomi. Naruto smiled, nice to meet you, Naomi-sama. Naomi laughed softly, you are very well-mannered, Naruto-kun. It is nice to meet you too. Naruto then said, not to be rude or anything, but having an animal contract is pretty serious. So shouldn't I be tested if I am worthy of the contract or not? Naomi easily replied, the word of Kyuubi-sama is proof enough. Believe me, if Kyuubi-sama didn't think you were worthy, he wouldn't have even told you that we exist. Naruto listened as Naomi told him the history of how the Kitsune contract came to be. Many years ago, way before the era of the cage, Kyuubi was still a free demon. It was a misconception that Kyuubi randomly attacked human settlements. In truth, Kyuubi only attacked those human settlements where the greatest concentration of negative feelings was. People were right to fear the Kyuubi, but they started taking out their anger on the normal foxes, attacking and killing a fox whenever it came into their sights. Kyuubi listened to the plight of the foxes and created this realm in a remote corner of the world, so that foxes can live without having to look over their shoulders every few moments. The foxes settled down in these hills and over time, they became beings that were strong and intelligent enough to create a summoning contract of their own. However, there was only one person worthy enough to become their summoner. Then, a prophecy was told that a boy judged worthy by their lord would become the next summoner of the foxes and would change the world. Naruto was frowning at the end of the explanation. I get the history of the foxes, Naomi-sama, but I was mentioned in a prophecy. Naomi saw that Naruto was likely to prod at that, so she changed the subject. A story for another time. For now, you need to meet the boss of the Kitsune. They arrived at a large gate, which stood well over a 120 meters. But what caused Naruto's mouth to drop were the guards that stood on either side of the doors. They were easily 70 to 80 meters, humanoid foxes like Kurama, with the opposable thumbs and all. They were wearing black, full sleeves haori and had swords strapped to their waists. The most notable features, though, were the 5 tails that lay 8 rest behind them. At Naruto's dumbfounded look, Naomi chuckled and explained. They are boss-level fighters, Naruto-kun. The number of tails they have denote their level of strength and as such, rank is given out. But you don't need to know that right now. She nodded to the guards, who bowed deeply to her and proceeded to open the gates. Naomi-sama, you seem to be an important figure around here, Naruto commented as they proceeded inside. Naomi winked at him, if you must know, I am a member of the High Council of the Kitsune. She laughed at Naruto's pale face and walked inside. Naruto snapped out of his shock and ran after her. The sight on the inside was just as shocking as it was on the outside. Large foxes, with tails that varied from 2 to 6, were inside sparring with each other with various weapons. Naruto found it curious that none of the noise was heard when they were standing outside the gates. A silencing barrier, perhaps. He marveled at the sheer amount of chakra he was sensing from each of them. It was easily S rank, surpassing the cage level. Naruto himself had cage-level chakra reserves due to having Kurama inside him and Uzumaki lineage. He looked around in awe, keeping up with Naomi, until he spotted a fox. The fox was easily the tallest of all, standing a bit taller than everyone. And he had 7 tails, making him the strongest fox here. Which meant he was the boss of the Kitsune. He had a deep blue fur, and wore a red haori which had the kanji for boss on the back. On his waist was strapped a chikuto. Naomi walked up to the boss, and as she did, Naruto noticed that everyone had stopped fighting and was bowing to her. After she acknowledged their now, they turned their attention to Naruto. As Naruto expected, they looked at him strangely, probably wondering what a human was doing in their realm. Naomi walked up to the boss of the Kitsune, who bowed deeply to her as well. Naomi-sama, his voice was deep like Kurama, but unlike the demon's rumbling, his voice was a deep, smooth baritone. Takeshi, she acknowledged. The now dubbed Takeshi straightened up and asked, Naomi-sama, what can I do for you today? Naomi's voice was full of authority. I want you to meet and judge the newest summoner of the Kitsune. The one who is mentioned in the prophecy. Takeshi frowned and asked, has he already arrived then? He then turned his eyes onto Naruto, who had to crane up his neck to see him. Takeshi bent down to take a greater look at Naruto. After a long moment, he dryly commented, you're tiny. Naruto almost face planted at that. Even the other foxes were sniggering with mirth. Only Naomi was the one watching the conversation with a serious eye. Naruto snarked at him, well, I can't be as tall as you now, can I? Naruto got the impression that he had just insulted the boss, if the sucking of breath and straightening of backs from the other foxes was any indication. Takeshi's eyes narrowed, but Naruto didn't show a hint of fear. He had come too far to get afraid now. I see you are quite witty yourself. But I have to ask, Naomi-sama, he turned his attention to Naomi, who judged him worthy. Kyuubi-sama. The single answer was enough for Takeshi to widen his eyes, along with all the other foxes. I see, he said slowly, straightening up. He gazed at Naruto. What is your name? Uzumaki Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. He rolled the name over his tongue, testing it out. He held an arm out. Climb on, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto wasn't startled this time, jumping onto the arm. Takeshi looked at him with a critical eye. If Kyuubi-sama has judged you worthy to be our summoner, then I have no doubt that you are strong. But physical strength isn't everything. As the Kitsune, we value wisdom and cleverness as much as we value our physical strength. So answer me this, Uzumaki Naruto. When you stop and look, you can always see it. If you try to touch, you cannot feel it. It cannot move, but as you near it, it moves away from you. What is it? Naruto thought for a moment and replied, it's the horizon. If Takeshi was surprised, he did an excellent job of hiding it. He chuckled, what a sharp wit you have, Uzumaki Naruto. You are strong in the mind as well, as expected from someone who is to be our summoner. He surprised Naruto by gently setting his hand on the ground, saving Naruto from jumping from such a height. He smiled, the Kitsune will be glad to serve as your summons, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto grinned widely and put a thumbs up, declaring loudly, I look forward to working with you guys as well. Takeshi chuckled loudly and said, Naomi-sama, now that I have judged our summoner, perhaps you should give him the contract. Naomi nodded and slapped her right front foot on the ground. A sealing array spread out, and in a puff of smoke, a large red scroll was revealed. Naomi spread it open and gestured Naruto to sign it. Naruto nodded, took a kunai, cutting his thumb and letting some blood flow out. Naruto deftly put his name onto one of the columns, absently noting the name of the previous summoner. Yamamoto Arashi. Naruto couldn't make anything of that name, so he put it at the back of his mind. Placing the top of all his fingers beneath his name, he released a breath. He was finally a fox summoner now. He watched as Naomi rolled the scroll up and it disappeared into a puff of smoke, presumably returning to where it came from. Naomi smiled at Naruto and said, Congratulations, Naruto-kun. We welcome you as the summoner of foxes. Naruto smiled and nodded. Naomi then addressed him, now that is over, I presume you know how to return. Naruto rose an eyebrow, it's the same way isn't it? Kuchiyos without the blood. When Naomi nodded, Naruto smiled and immediately performed the seals, saying, I'll summon you as soon as I can, Takeshi-san. With that, Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke. One of the foxes scoffed, as if he could summon you, Takeshi-sama. He was not expecting a blade to his throat, with Takeshi holding it with narrowed eyes. He gulped as his boss growled, I will not tolerate anyone insulting our new summoner. Is that clear? He asked the question to everyone. Hi. Naomi muttered to herself, things are starting to look interesting on the horizon, Naruto-kun. XXXXXXX only 5 seemed to pass, but even then Jiraiya was close to chewing his nails. He was about to go into panic mode when a puff of smoke revealed Naruto, standing triumphantly with arms crossed. Jiraiya almost melted in relief, then asked the relevant question. Did you get it? Naruto grinned and spread his arms. You are now looking at the newest summoner of the Kitsune clan. Chapter 16 Naruto and Jiraiya established a schedule for Naruto's training. Jiraiya would create 2 shadow clones along with Naruto. He would remain with the original, while the other 2 would practice in Fuinjutsu and Ninjutsu. Naruto was already master of Fuinjutsu, so there was not much to teach him that he didn't already know. Instead, they were working on new seals that he could use in the future. Not just in the Chunin exams, but against other opponents as well. Naruto's grasp on ninjutsu was pretty solid, not to mention his vast repertoire of them. He knew more C to B rank jutsus rather than the A ranks, and he used them very efficiently. He usually preferred using Suiten and Futon, but his Kaden and Raiden were equally good. Jiraiya was training him in A-B rank fire jutsu, Kaden, Hanu Suda fire style, blazing hands. Since Naruto knew that his opponent was primarily a taijutsu type fighter, he would have to fight hand to hand at some point. But Naruto knew that the Hyuga preferred to stick with their gentle fist. He already had a good repertoire of mid to long range jutsus to fight. Also, he knew the gentle fist targeted the Tenketsu, the points in chakra network that control the flow of chakra. But just like Tenten, Neji couldn't have found a worse opponent since Naruto didn't have a chakra network, so Neji's fighting style was already null and void. Add to the fact that the Hyuga see learning elemental jutsu beneath someone of their stature, and Neji is totally crushed. The original Naruto was concentrating on increasing the speed of his reflexes in taijutsu against Jiraiya. Naruto found out on the first day of their training that Jiraiya was holding back a lot. Their routing was something like this. First, the Sannin would check whether Naruto's resistance seals were actually affecting him or not. Based on that, he would let it remain or change them to a higher level. Then he would tell him to just defend. Naruto would have impressive bruises by the end of the defensive sessions. After half an hour of relaxation, in which his bruises would get healed, Naruto would be told to try and hit Jiraiya. And every single day for the first week, he was only able to hit the man 5 times at the most. Granted, his fighting style, the elemental fist, was as aggressive as it was defensive, not to mention had a minority of made-up moves that he usually employed to finish a fight. He was still far from landing critical hits on the Sannin. Guess he isn't a Sannin in just name, after all, Naruto thought as he relaxed in the onsen. Today was the first Saturday of the month, and he and Jiraiya did nothing but a small, time-limited spar to evaluate Naruto's skills. Naruto had mastered the blazing hands in a total of just 4 hours, and spent rest of the week trying to incorporate it into his fighting style. Jiraiya had released him early because Naruto was to do his own training in the weekends. And Naruto planned to hit a long overdue task, his father's simulation room. He had 5 more levels to go, and Naruto planned to hit 4 of them in the following 4 weekends. He was confident that he would be able to complete with some, if not full ease. But he would worry about that later. Right now, Naruto felt nothing but exasperation along with resignation as he watched his godfather giggle perversely as he peeked onto the women's side of the bath. After their spar, Jiraiya had suggested they go to the onsen to relax. Naruto, the naive idiot that he was, readily agreed, saying he could use a hot bath. However, Naruto had planned on discussing a few things with Jiraiya about what he learned during the first week of the training month while relaxing. This was the first time he learnt that when Jiraiya suggested they relax in a hot bath, he really just wanted to peek on the women. Even though there were only 2 of them on the men's side, Naruto sunk lower in order to hide the fact that he was here with Jiraiya. Oh ho ho, this is good, very good, Jiraiya giggled lecherously as he gazed on the naked women on the other side. Naruto glared at his back fiercely, making the tiger hand seal. Chains of water rose up and wrapped around Jiraiya, viciously yanking him back into the water. Can't you stop being a pervert for just a moment and relax? Naruto dryly asked him as his head came out of the water. Jiraiya looked genuinely offended at the question. What? That's just not possible. Being a pervert runs in my blood. Jiraiya proclaimed graciously, even pumping a fist to prove his point. As if that's something to be proud of, Naruto grumbled as he got up, wrapping his towel around his waist. If he stayed any longer, he would faint from dizziness. He would hit the simulation later tonight, so right now he had nothing to do. As he walked towards his apartment, he absently wondered, I wonder what kind of training Sasuke is going through. Elsewhere, Sasuke sneezed, causing to slip into the water with his hands still alight with lightning, shocking him. XXXXXXX Naruto panted as the simulation got over. His opponent lay beaten before him. It wasn't tough, but it wasn't easy either. A wave of satisfaction passed over him as he went through the fight in his head. This time, he had managed to inflict most of the bruises onto his opponent instead of himself. His opponent was crafty, and his fighting style was something Naruto had never seen. He fought almost like he was dancing, weaving around in circular patterns. His hands were almost always on the ground and kicks were inverted, the force behind increased with each maneuver. However, Naruto was able to find the weakness of this style. As offensive it was, only evasion tactics were used by his opponent to escape his attacks. There weren't many blocks, so the upper body's only way to not get hit is to continuously keep moving in an acrobatic way. Naruto, however, was able to land in a few attacks before getting annoyed. His opponent's patterns were too erratic to find an opening and exploit it at the same time. So Naruto himself improvised. An opponent with a style like that can be dealt with many ways, but the option that stood out the most to Naruto was the use of brute force. Up until now, Naruto had only attacked the opponent. However, Naruto enhanced his fist with his chakra and punched the ground hard. The force behind it was not what Naruto expected it to be. A few cracks spread around the impact area, but the force was enough to make his opponent stumble, just for a moment. Just what Naruto needed. In a flash step, he appeared before the attacker and slammed his fist straight into the stomach. The human body isn't strong enough to withstand the amount of force that Naruto put in the punch. Added with the fact that the last punch was enhanced by the blazing hands, and his opponent was out for the count. Naruto flashed into his apartment, groaning and looking forward to a hot shower after the session. He was to start his summoning training from Monday, so that was something to look forward to. He took off all his clothes and grabbed a towel from the rack, entering the bathroom and closing it. He sighed in relief as the hot water poured over him, washing all the grime and dirt from his body as well as soothing his muscles. He stood in there for over 20 minutes, after which he turned off the shower, wiping the water off him and tying it at the waist. Exiting the bathroom, he shut the door and paused for a moment before turning around, eyes narrowing. After a moment, he sighed and relaxed. He proceeded to get dressed and eat dinner before retiring to sleep. He failed to take notice of the crow perched on the lamp post outside his apartment, an ominous Sharingan in its eye socket. XXXXXXX. Yosh. You ready to learn the awesomeness that is summoning? Jiraiya questioned loudly, grinning like he knew something Naruto didn't. Naruto just stared at him in a deadpan. Jiraiya began to feel uncomfortable under the deadpan, coughing into his fist in order to maintain his dignity. Alright, summoning is a pretty simple jutsu, with a little amount technicalities. The chakra requirements for each summon differ greatly. Take me for example. If I put a large amount of chakra in the jutsu, I am likely to get a bigger and a stronger summon, like a battle toad, than when I put in a small amount of chakra, which is when I get a messenger toad. You will have to adjust accordingly to your summons, he explained. Naruto had to admit that whenever Jiraiya was serious-like, it was actually possible to see how intelligent he was. Nodding to Jiraiya, Naruto bit his left thumb, allowing blood to come out. He then went through the hand seals and slammed his hand on the ground, pumping a little more than a quarter amount of his chakra. Kuchio's no jutsu. While the sealing array spread out from beneath his hands, nothing else happened. Naruto rose an eyebrow in confusion. Jiraiya noticed it and smirked. While not shouting out the name of your jutsus is admirable and very useful as a habit, this one is a special case. You have to verbally pronounce it. Naruto rolled his eyes at that and exclaimed, Kuchio's no jutsu. In a large puff of smoke, it revealed that Naruto had managed to summon Takeshi, the boss of foxes. The large summon easily towered over the entire forest they were in, providing a great view to Naruto, who stood upon the fox's head. Jiraiya was gaping at the gigantic summon that Naruto had managed to summon on his first try. Kami, I didn't know that the foxes were this powerful. This guy could easily tower over Gamabunta, and that guy's size is no joke at all. How the hell did Naruto manage to summon him on his first try? And judging by the giant sword, this guy's easily skilled in Kenjutsu. Naruto really did land a treasure with the fox contract, Jiraiya thought in awe as continued gazing the summon. Takeshi blinked when he didn't find any threat in front of him, so he addressed his summoner. Naruto-san. His voice snapped Naruto from his mental dance of victory. Ah, Takeshi-san. I was practicing the summoning jutsu to get used to using it in the future. Takeshi gave a sound of realization, I see. In that case, allow me to give you a little advice. Whenever you use the Kuchio's no jutsu, state what type of summon do you want to come to your aid. Battle summons are always on standby, so you don't need to state this for battle summons. But I have to say, it is nothing short of impressive for you to manage to summon me at your age, he complimented Naruto. Naruto blushed at the praise and rubbed the back of his head, chuckling sheepishly, thank you, Takeshi-san. And please, just Naruto is fine. Takeshi chuckled, very well, Naruto it is. And don't hesitate to call me if things get difficult for you, Naruto. He dispelled himself after that, returning to the realm of the foxes. Naruto easily landed in a crouch beside a stunned Jiraiya. What the hell was that brat? Jiraiya almost yelled with wide eyes. Naruto gave him an innocent look, what do you mean? Jiraiya pointed a finger at him, don't give me that look. How the hell did you summon the boss of foxes in your first try? Even I didn't manage to summon the toad boss on the first try. Naruto gave him a confused look, all you have to do is pump the chakra and based on the amount, you get the summon, right? I pumped a significant amount in the jutsu right now. Jiraiya had calmed a little from Naruto's explanation, but was a little curious too. Just how much did you put into it? Naruto shrugged, a little over a quarter of my chakra. Jiraiya nodded absent-mindedly, but then he really registered what Naruto said and whipped around to stare at him. Is he for real? A little over a quarter. Most people his age would have had chakra exhaustion trying to summon the boss and they would still fail. But then again, his reserves are steadily being increased by the seal, so that's that, he thought speculatively. Well, brat, since you have shown that you can already summon the boss, we'll try to reduce the amount to see what you can get. Who knows, you might even get a personal summon of your own, Jiraiya suggested, mentally smirking when he saw Naruto's eyes lighting up at the words, personal summon. Naruto grinned at the thought of having a fox partner. That would be so cool. He ignored Kurama's grumbles of, I'm right here, and cut his thumb, flashing through the hand signs and slamming his hand on the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. A burst of smoke revealed that he had managed to summon a white fox with black markings on its upper body, standing up to Naruto's waist. It had a white tail swaying lazily behind it while it peered up to Naruto with curious green eyes. Who are you? Its tone, a soft tenor, held a hint of curiosity mixed with cautiousness. Naruto grinned and pointed towards himself with his thumb. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, the newest summoner of the Kitsune. Nice to meet you. He watched as the fox's eyes brightened up and almost laughed when the fox introduced itself in a similar manner, pointing towards itself with its opposable thumbs. You are the newest summoner. This is awesome. My name is Raiden, the second son of the boss of the Kitsune and the most awesome Kitsune ever. Pleased to meet you. Man, Naruto had to stop himself from glomping the fox because his voice was just so damn cute. Naruto laughed at Raiden's introduction and said, pleased to meet you too, Raiden. You are actually the second summon I've summoned, you know. Raiden frowned, the second. Who's the first? Naruto smiled proudly, why, your father of course. Raiden's eyes widened, you managed to summon my father. You must be really strong then. Naruto just closed his eyes and nodded, enjoying the moment and completely ignoring Jiraiya, who was gaping at the both of them. Kami, he's just like Naruto, he thought as he observed them converse. Raiden seemed come to some realization as he tugged at Naruto's lower, gaining a curious look from the boy. Naruto, do you know what this means? You summoning me? His voice seemed to grow with excitement as he voiced his question. Naruto raised a confused eyebrow. No, what does this mean? Raiden shook his head with wonder. It is a requirement to summon the boss of any summoning clan after you sign the contract, Naruto. However, whomever you summon next, becomes the summoner's personal summon. He finished with a significant amount of glee in his voice. Naruto also started grinning, and at the end of his explanation, he engulfed the fox in a hug, burying his head in his fur. Which means you are my personal summons now. We are going to have so much fun together, Raiden. The fox also laughed in happiness, and it was then that Naruto remembered something. Oh, Raiden, I almost forgot. This is my godfather, Jiraiya, he introduced the smirking man sitting behind him. Finally remembered me, huh Naruto? You are the Toad Sage. Raiden's whisper had the unmistakable feeling of awe. Jiraiya grinned and exclaimed, indeed I am. Raiden began to shake in excitement. Kami-sama, I can't believe you have such cool company, Naruto. This is the first time I've met a summoner of the Toad clan, let alone a sage. Jiraiya was basking in pride that even the summons he hadn't heard of before seemed to know who he was. But that feeling of pride quickly shattered when Naruto spoke. Seriously, he's not that cool, Raiden. He's a pervert. Jiraiya shouted in defense, sounding extremely offended. Wrong. I'm a super pervert. However, Raiden shook his head, amused by the antics of the large man. I'll remember that in the future. It is nice to meet you, Jiraiya-sama. Turning to Naruto, he poked him in the chest. Naruto, don't you forget about me. Summon me whenever you can, okay? Even if you just want to hang out or talk. I've been told I'm a great listener. Naruto smiled and nodded, rubbing Raiden's head. Raiden then dispelled himself back to the summoning realm. XXXXXXX. The next 2 weeks were spent like the first week, since Naruto already had an excellent grasp on his summoning. So they spent the next 2 weeks speeding up his taijutsu and adding jutsu to his arsenal. Naruto had learnt 4 more jutsu, 1 jutsu for each of his affinity, and had improved his fighting speed considerably. For lightning, he had learnt Raiden, Raiko Kauzen no Jutsu, lightning style, lightning beam technique, AB rank jutsu. He had found this jutsu in the Nadime's library. A beam of lightning twice as wide as his arm. If it hits the target will experience a fantastic amount of pain and will be heavily stunned, not to mention unconscious from the pain. Even if it's a near miss, the effects will be of some effect due to small bolts of lightning escaping. While he won't be using this against Neji, it was still a very useful technique for live capture. For fire, he had learnt Kaden, Menamian high fire style, invisible fire AB rank technique Tobirama had created with the help of someone named Uchiha Kagami. After molding chakra, Naruto would expel a single, colorless beam of gas from his mouth. However, upon getting in contact with a target, the gas will spontaneously combust, and the strength of the resulting explosion will depend on how much chakra Naruto put into it. For air, he learnt the Fuden, Repusho wind style, Gale wind palm AC rank technique created by someone in the Senju clan. After forming the needed hand seals, the user basically had to send an open palm thrust towards his opponent, which is capable of causing severe injury. Naruto can also use this in conjunction with a thrown weapon to increase its power. For water, he learnt not a jutsu, but the secret behind creating water out of thin air. It was what Tobirama was known for throughout the entire shinobi world. Usually, condensation is used to derive water from vapors. However, Tobirama did not have the luxury of creating vapor in the middle of a battlefield and then condensing it to form water. Therefore, he would cleverly saturate the air around him with his chakra, without losing control of it, so that whenever he was in need of water and no water body was near, he would simply mold the chakra-saturated air into water, thus negating the disadvantage that water could not be used without water bodies. What was amazing basically meant turning a battlefield into a geographical advantage. With your chakra saturating the air, Tobirama could literally use it to do anything. This is what I could come up. A bit of BS, so please bear with me. For Fuinjutsu, he completed the chakra suppressing seal he was working on with Jiraiya. He made it so that upon application, the chakra of the target would be completely locked. Which meant they were completely helpless unless they had something to outrun him without chakra. Another thing he came up with was slapping resistance seals on his opponents. Simple, but very effective, something he would use against Neji. All in all, with the help of his shadow clones, Naruto spent almost a week to entirely master the first 3 techniques, meaning using them with the minimum amount of hand seals. He was still working on Tobirama's chakra saturation technique, using it discreetly without letting your enemy know. However, it's useless against a censor. It was the last remaining week of the month, and Jiraiya had said that the last week was fully for Naruto train himself. That was good, since Naruto, with his nigh limitless spamming of shadow clones, had the chance to test his learnings in a battle simulation. It was the second day of the last week and Naruto was taking a water break, his t-shirt and jacket having been discarded for a while to avoid them from getting drenched in his sweat. So, what do you think of my training, Raiden? He asked after taking a sip of water. Raiden watched his summoner, sitting some distance away. Well, it's definitely intense. You sure work hard for all your genius, Naruto, he dryly commented. When he was first summoned, he was delighted when Naruto asked him to give him some company while he trained. He had then proceeded to watch with wide eyes as Naruto summoned an army of around 500 shadow clones for an all-out battle against them. Raiden had asked, just out of curiosity, that how much chakra had Naruto just spent making the clones. I'd say, a full 3/4 of my total reserves, Naruto had replied after a moment. Raiden had dumbly nodded and watched as Naruto proceeded to decimate his army. He had paid close attention to what Naruto had said and was doing some mental calculations. If Naruto spent a whole 3/4 of his chakra, that meant he would be close to light chakra exhaustion if he spent any more. But Naruto had explained it to him that whenever shadow clones are dispelled, the chakra returns to the original, along with the memories of that clone. Raiden observed that Naruto had started with taijutsu, destroying a dozen clones at first. Then, he used an elemental jutsu, whether it be fire or air or water or lightning, to destroy another group. He would then switch back to taijutsu, then use a jutsu again. It was a cycle, Raiden realized after intense observation. Naruto never used any jutsu if he didn't have sufficient chakra to not collapse into exhaustion. But the funny thing that Raiden realized, was that he couldn't understand whether Naruto was losing chakra or gaining it back. If it was simply taijutsu, Naruto would be gaining all the chakra back without any expenditure of his remaining reserves. But since he occasionally used a jutsu, it was hard to determine. In the end, he just presented Naruto with his theory and asked his opinion for it. Naruto had thought for a whole 5 minutes and then replied, I'll put a pin on it, but I'm not thinking about it now. Turns out, Naruto was mentally exhausted as well, because he gained the memories of 500 clones in just 2 hours, so he won't be exerting any more today. Raiden was surprised he had remained conscious after all that stress. Naruto chuckled, you say it like geniuses don't have to work hard. To his surprise, Raiden nodded, completely supporting his point. Naruto corrected him right then. Raiden, he said softly, sitting beside the fox so that his head was on Naruto's thigh, that is a belief which isn't right. People misunderstand what genius actually means. They believe that someone who achieves something great without appearing to work hard is hailed as a genius. But that's not true. Genius is just a great capacity for hard work. Take me for example, I have excellent chakra control, which allows me to grasp jutsus very quickly. But learning jutsus and mastering them are two totally different things. It is my genius that allows me to grasp concepts so quickly and easily. He stroked Raiden's head tenderly, having the fox's undivided attention, but only through hard work can I master them completely. That is what genius is. Genius is the beginning of something great, but it is hard work that sees you through the finish. Genius is nothing without hard work. Raiden gazed at Naruto with wide eyes, who just looked at him with a small smile on his face. The fox could only shake his head in awe as he began to see Naruto in a new light. I always thought that geniuses never have to work hard, but I never looked it from your point of view, he mumbled, his head resting on Naruto's thigh. Naruto was wise beyond his years, that was for sure. Why, you got some genius you are competing against? Naruto inquired. Raiden just sighed and took comfort in Naruto's scratches behind his ears. My elder brother, Toshi, is a part of the trackers of the Kitsune, and he is regarded a genius in almost every way. He already has gained 2 tails and is close to achieving the 3rd. My family always says I should be more like him, he grumbled. He sounds interesting. Trust me, he's a douchebag, Raiden replied as they collapsed into a peaceful silence. While Naruto wanted to say something, he kept quiet, not wanting to interfere in what was clearly a family matter. Raiden, on the other hand, was thinking about what Naruto had said. If what he said was true, did Toshi really work that hard to be where he was? Was he just seeing the tip of the iceberg? More importantly, if hard work was the key, was he not working hard enough? The questions plagued his mind for a while as Naruto kept scratching his ear. So lost in their thoughts they were that they didn't even notice the presence behind them. The sunset looks really beautiful from here, a female voice commented from behind them. Their reactions were instantaneous. Raiden was on his hind legs on an instant, taking the offensive stance of the Kitsune fighting style, a snarl displaying his sharp teeth. Naruto himself had whipped two of his kunai into his hands in an instant, coating them in wind chakra and getting into his usual offensive stance, muscles tensed for any action. Only when he got a good look at the speaker did he relax. Raiden, relax. She's a friend, he sighed. Raiden looked at his partner before relaxing, turning his eyes onto the girl. Tamari looked at both of them with something skin to amusement. She inspected the fox, then Naruto. Based on what she had seen from the last 5 minutes, they seemed to be pretty close. She had also gotten a good look at the bare upper body of Naruto, both front and back, and she had to admit, he was definitely hot, hotter than most of the males she had seen. She marveled at how defined his muscles were for his age. His chest muscles were clearly developed for someone his age, not to mention his abs. The perfectly chiseled six-pack caused her to blush deeply, imagining not so straight thoughts about her and Naruto being in an intimate position, being embraced by his powerful arms. How can I help you today, Tamari? The voice broke her out of her thoughts and she desperately tried to regain control of her blush. Naruto and Raiden, who now was a little taller than Naruto's shoulder on his hind legs, looked at her quizzically. Raiden turned to Naruto and looked at his face, as if looking for something. He smirked when his nose picked up traces of arousal from both Naruto and Tamari. If he was smelling correctly. Naruto, is she your girlfriend? He bluntly asked, not even hiding his smirk when both of them turned to him. Tamari looked at him with slight anger, her blush not receding at all. Naruto looked at him with wide eyes of disbelief and a slightly open mouth. Tamari regained her wits faster than Naruto, who still looked agape at his partner's suggestion. She almost swung her fan at Raiden. Why you? That was as far as she got when she stopped when Naruto got in front of the fox, holding a palm up and a small smile on his face. It was a joke, Tamari. He's a bit of a joker. Turning his face so that he faced Raiden and Tamari couldn't see him, he gave a death glare to Raiden. The fox would have been intimidated greatly if not for the slight blush on Naruto's face. Go back, Naruto mouthed. Raiden winked at him and mouthed back, all the best, before going back home. Naruto barely resisted from bashing the fox's head. He took a deep breath and turned back to Tamari, whose eyes were a bit lower than his. He became acutely aware for the first time that he was naked above his waist. He tried to salvage the situation with some light flirting, you see something you like. He saw as Tamari's eyes snapped to his and had to hide his smirk at the embarrassment swimming in her eyes. He then saw her take a deep breath herself and calm down. She then smirked and replied in the same, light flirting tone, don't mind if I do. And it's quite a sight. She kept her smirk from widening when she saw him look away. Naruto decided to address the issue, so, any reason why you are here? He walked towards his t-shirt and jacket. He quickly got dressed and faced her, arms folded. She put one hand her hip, her smirk turning into a smile. I just wanted to say, nice job in the prelims. You gave the dog boy quite the beating. Naruto smirked and shrugged, I had something to settle with him, that's all. And your fight was something to see as well. I feel bad for my fellow Konoha, he complimented, sitting down. He was surprised when Tamari walked and sat down in front of him as well, a little closer than what was appropriate. But I'm not complaining, he mentally smirked. She shrugged, thank you for the compliment, but I believe it was just an unlucky matchup for her. Naruto nodded in agreement, having come to the same conclusion as before. He thought if he should ask her what was the Jinchuriki of Suna doing in a foreign village, especially during something as important as Chunin exams, but refrained. He could ask her later. Tamari looked at Naruto closely. He was quite relaxed, but his position was such that he would be able to react instantaneously if she were to attack him now. Speaking of which, say, would you care for a spar? She asked, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. He gestured to himself, as you can see, I have just finished today's training, so I'm quite tired. He watched her give a silent, ah, but the disappointment was clear. He had to give her points though, she was quite bold in her attempt at trying to learn what his trump cards were. Too bad. But, her head lifted up, I wouldn't mind a short taijutsu spar. His smirk told her exactly that he knew why she asked for such a request. He hadn't said it, but he already knew why she was there. No point in hiding now, though. You are irritatingly smart, she grumbled, causing him to chuckle. He got up and held out a hand for her to get up. She looked at it for a moment and scoffed, but grabbed it nonetheless, allowing him to pull her up. Naruto looked down at the hand he held and just felt it for a moment. It was a bit smaller than his own, yet it fit perfectly in his own. He heard a small cough and looked up to see Temari's blushing face in a scowl. He immediately let go of it, a blush creeping up his face. He realized how creepy he must have looked. He cleared his throat and gestured behind him, shall we? That's how the next 4 days went. Naruto would summon hundreds of clones for an all-out battle to improve his application of newly learnt skills and techniques, fight for over 2 hours and then relax. Temari would come by sometime in the evening and they would spar. Naruto usually limited the spars with taijutsu so as to not accidentally reveal some of his tricks. Temari had caught on as well, and didn't protest at all, preferring to keep her tricks a secret as well. They would make small talk after the spar, and then Naruto would offer to escort her back, but she would playfully refuse every time. Naruto always thought that she was being observed, which is why she refused every time. She didn't want to be seen getting too friendly with a Konoha-nin. Today was Saturday and so, Naruto planned to hit the simulation room one last time before the Chunin finals. He had already completed till the 5th level, each time more difficult than the last. But every level gave him ideas on where to improve, which he practiced all week and apply it onto the next level. So this is why Naruto was at the apartment right now, sitting on the floor of his bedroom and looking at the 30 kunai in front of him. He had already imprinted the seals on the handle of the tri-pronged kunai. One was the Jutsu Shiki for the Hiraishin, and the other was the seal he had developed so that the kunai could be stuck on the surface of water as well, allowing him to use them in the areas where water bodies were. You seem to be thinking something about last night, Naruto, Kurama commented from within. Naruto kept gazing at the kunai as he replied, last night, I can't figure out why they are doing this. Flashback late last night, Naruto was sitting on top of his father's head, idly wondering on how the villagers would react to his reveal. I can think of 2 things. Either they would start worshipping me, or the villagers who have some morals left in them would feel guilty enough to commit suicide based on the reason that they tortured the son of their beloved Yondaime for years. What do you think, Kurama? A chuckle sounded from within his mind. You know how the villagers are, Naruto. They would probably try to suck up to you after knowing just who you are, but I wouldn't mind witnessing the second option. What about you? Which one do you prefer? Naruto sighed at Kurama's insinuation, I don't prefer either one. I would actually prefer if they just treated me like any other villager, but that won't be happening anytime soon, considering I'm the heir to 2 major clans of Konoha, Lord if I make Chunin. Kurama huffed, you humans confuse me terribly. An excellent opportunity for you to crush them beneath your heel for what they have done to you and you are considering letting them go. I would have made a meal out of them if I were you. Naruto chuckled, I don't see what's wrong in being the better man, Kurama. Kurama was about to say something when he sensed an influx of chakra about 2 miles away, along with negative feelings. Naruto, can you sense that? Naruto raised an eyebrow but spread out his senses nonetheless, sitting up straight when he too sensed the amount of chakra being molded. Just who was molding a Chunin level amount of chakra at this time in the night? Making a half-ram seal, he used a series of body flickers to get where the chakra signatures were. When he reached there, he was horrified what he witnessed. He saw the prelims proctor, Gekko Hayate, locked in a battle with the Sand Jonin, Baki, if Naruto remembered correctly, and was losing, badly. He had numerous injuries on his person. If that blade of wind cut him, Hayate could kiss his life goodbye. He immediately acted. First priority was to get Hayate to the Hokage Tower. Baki held a blade of wind in his right hand, the other hand holding the sword of the proctor. He had to admit, Hayate was exceptionally skilled at Kenjutsu and had almost gotten him, but his sickness slowed him down terribly, allowing Baki to gain the upper hand. Try stopping this blade of wind. He was about to shove it into Hayate's chest when a blur grabbed Hayate and dodged, making Baki miss completely. Baki had just enough time to turn to his left, where he had seen the blur go, to witness Hayate disappearing in a blue flash. He cursed under his breath. Damn it, he escaped. Kage-sama won't like this. He vanished in a wind shunshin to inform his leader. The thought of the flash completely missed him. Naruto appeared in the Hokage's office, surprised to see the his Jiji still working at this time of the night. Anbu surrounded him in an instant, the only reason not skewering him because he still held Hayate in a fireman's carry. Hiruzen immediately stood up. Tora, get Hayate to the medical wing of this tower immediately. The Anbu stepped forward, took Hayate from Naruto and vanished. Hiruzen turned his attention to Naruto and spoke in a commanding voice, report. Naruto straightened up and narrated what happened. At the end of his report, Hiruzen sighed heavily and sat down. I didn't know it was this bad. Naruto asked in slight confusion, what do you mean, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen folded his hands and rested his chin on it. Naruto, on your suspicions, I assigned Gekko Hayate to keep a watch on Yakushi Kabuto. He was to report me any unusual activity that concerned the target. It seems that tonight is the first time he witnessed something significant, but was discovered and was likely going to be killed in order to keep the information from being discovered. He looked Naruto in the eye. It is most likely that Konoha is facing the possibility of an invasion from Suna. Naruto folded his arms. I didn't know Suna had enough manpower to take on the strongest of the five on its own. In fact, from the books that I've read, Suna is the weakest of the five. Hiruzen shook his head. I know the Kage well enough to understand that he's not stupid enough to make such a bold move. Which means he has an ally. He had a suspicion as to who it was, but that was for him to deal with. Naruto nodded. That would surely be the case, but we can rule out the possibility of Kumo, Iwa and Kiri attacking. Kiri is still wrapped up in a civil war. Iwa is still recovering from the defeat in the last war. Kumo wouldn't want to break the peace treaty you had established over the Hyuga just yet, which leaves. Hiruzen filled in the blanks. There's a new up-and-coming hidden village, whose genin have participated in the exams. Otogakure. It is possible, but we don't know for sure. Naruto, you must keep this meeting a secret. Not a word is to be let out, do you understand? Hi, Hokage-sama. Dismissed. Flashback end. Why don't you ask your vixen? She might have an answer, Kurama suggested, both half seriously and half innocently. Naruto absently nodded, until he registered what Kurama said. What do you mean by that? Temari isn't my vixen, he corrected him in a sputter. Just what was the kitsune trying to say? Kurama laughed. I'm the only being in this world, Naruto, who you can't fool. I've seen the way you look at her. You want to just grab her and, shut up. He shouted to the being inside him, his face a deep shade of red. He shook his head violently to shake off the train of thoughts Kurama had started. He couldn't imagine himself pinning her to a wall. He banged his head on the floor to clear it. Why did you suggest it? These thoughts are hard to get rid of, you know. Kurama, the bastard, just laughed heartily. Naruto decided to eat at Ichiraku tonight, just because he felt too lazy to cook dinner. Kurama grumbled from within, saying that he always made his clones cook. Naruto easily blocked him out. Gathering and sealing the kunai up in a scroll, he put the scroll in his closet and stepped outside his building. Leisurely walking in the direction of the ramen bar, he was surprised to see Temari about 100 meters from him, looking rather annoyed. She seemed to be searching for someone, and Naruto had an inkling as to who she was searching for. Naruto observed her looking around before catching his mop of blonde hair and marching in his direction, scowl firmly etched onto her face and anger rolling off her in waves. He sighed and steeled himself, for he knew what was about to come. Temari reached him quickly and stopped in front of him, hands on her hips. The anger was visible in her eyes. Where were you today? You missed our spar. Naruto didn't know if he should feel afraid of her or amusement about whether how cute she looked when she was angry. So he just held up his hands in defense. I know, but I have a legitimate reason for missing it. Temari folded her arms. Then let's hear it. Naruto put his arms in his pocket and thought on how to tell her about his simulation fight this night. You see, he grinned at the blush that came on Temari's face. Since Monday is the day of the Chunin finals, my sensei wanted to have one last fight to test my skills. So he told me to rest the whole day to be in top condition for our fight. The light came out smoother than what he thought. And it was partially true. Level 6 was no joke, and Naruto wanted to be in peak form for it. Naruto got an idea. How about as an apology, I take you out for dinner? He didn't even stutter this time, he thought proudly. Tamari thought that it was a lie, but she couldn't fault for his sensei having to evaluate his student one last time before the exams, so she believed it. She blinked at the sudden question, and a smirk spread on her face. She took a step closer to him. Is this another date, Naruto? Naruto smirked as well, internally jumping in joy from each other, and he could vaguely flavor. Only if you want it to be, he whispered huskily. He vaguely remembered that they were in the middle of a market. He, however, didn't expect Tamari to lean forward so that her lips were a hair's breadth away from his own. Oh, I do, she returned. She was surprised when Naruto suddenly backed away, grinning playfully. Before she could feel hurt about her advances being rejected, an arm was draped across her shoulder, pulling her close. She yelped and steadied herself against what she felt to be Naruto's upper body. Then I really hope you don't mind if we go to Ichiraku. If I had known, I would have planned earlier. Naruto tried to play it smooth. It was a risky move, pulling Tamari into a side hug. He had expected to be bashed in the head by her fan, but when she didn't, he relaxed and simultaneously celebrated inside his mind. She likes me. Kurama felt nauseous at how much joy was filled in that single thought. For a being of hatred such as himself, joy was his kryptonite. So he just tried to ignore it as much as he could. Such sappiness didn't suit him. Naruto kept his arm around Temari's shoulder and started walking in the direction of the ramen bar. Tamari had to adjust her arms, so she just put one hand on his side. I really don't mind, she coolly replied. But she was barely keeping from letting a goofy smile spread on her face. She knew she liked Naruto, to the point of having an intense crush on him. But being in such close, physical contact with him only after knowing him for only a short time was almost overwhelming. The trip was short, lasting only 5 minutes. Just when they were within 50 meters of the bar, Naruto removed his arm from her shoulders, instead enveloping her hand in his own, giving it a small squeeze. He gave a warm smile to Tamari, who blushed lightly, but returned the smile and squeezed back. They entered the ramen bar, and Ayame was the first to spot them, and then she spotted them holding hands and smiling. She promptly squealed in happiness, increasing the blush on Naruto and Temari's faces, but neither let go of each other's hands. Toiki came running out of the back in response to his daughter's squeal. When he saw the reason for her squeal, he himself grinned in parental pride. Naruto. So you finally made it official, I see, he commented. Naruto and Tamari blushed even more at this, but Naruto was the one who spoke. We haven't, actually. But I will in the near future, he said with a wink towards Tamari, managing to somewhat reduce his blush. Tamari, however, just barely kept from hitting him for embarrassing her. The only reason she didn't because of what Naruto said. Ayame clasped her hands together and sighed dreamily. Oh, you two look so cute together. Naruto and Tamari slid onto the seats, side by side. They gave their orders, but when they were served, they were surprised by Toiki's announcement. Today's meal is on the house. Think of it as a congratulatory gift from us, he added a wink in Naruto's directions. Naruto and Tamari tried to deny that they weren't in a relationship yet, sounded in both of their minds, but Toiki easily waved their sputters away. Trust me, he said, adults know it when two people are meant to be together or not. That sealed it. Naruto and Tamari both reached the peak of embarrassment after hearing that statement, but there was nothing they could do until they finished their meals. Deliberately avoiding meeting each other's eyes, they quietly finished their meals and got out of there. Tamari was the first one to break the silence between them. Those folks are weird. They kept teasing us all the time, she grumbled in annoyance. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Don't be like that. They are some of the very few people in the village that care about me. That sparked Temari's interest. She didn't know Naruto only had a small amount of people close to him. What do you mean when you say, some of the very few? It was a question of curiosity, so Naruto couldn't fault her for that. But the memories of years of loneliness resurfaced, and some of that sadness must have shown on his face, for Tamari hastily backtracked, "You don't have to answer that if you don't want to." Naruto waved away her apology, "It's okay, you were just curious. But if you don't mind, I'd like to keep the answers to myself." His tone was soft, but the request was clear in his voice. Tamari nodded, but wondered just what had happened to Naruto for him to get so sad so early in his life. She couldn't help but compare Naruto and Gaara in that aspect, both of them shunned by the village in some way. She felt for him, just like she felt for Gaara. Gaara had been chosen by their father to bear that particular burden of a Biju. Because of that, everyone in the village had ostracized Gaara in the extreme. Their father felt that Gaara was too dangerous, which is why he hired assassins to kill him. That was the last straw for Gaara. He became cold, so cold that the slightest provocation would cause him to kill someone, without batting an eyebrow. She tried to show him that she still cared for him as his older sister, but the distrust was so much deep-rooted into him that he distanced himself even from her. However, Naruto wasn't like that. He was willing to trust others, like her. But another problem lay in front of her. If tried to comfort him, it would just be a lie, for they would be standing on the opposite sides of a war just 2 days later. So she just held his hand, trying to give what little comfort she could. Naruto was surprised when he felt a warm hand holding his own. He saw Tamari smiling at him, and he smiled in return, knowing that she was trying to comfort him. He turned his eyes back forward and saw an alley coming up. He felt extremely bad for what he was about to do, but as a shinobi of Konoha, the village came before everything, even personal feelings. So he pulled her into the alleyway, earning a surprised yelp from her. However, she was well trained. Her reflexes were fast, but nowhere near his own. He immediately grabbed her right hand with his left, pinning it above her head. Just as her left reached for her fan, he grabbed it with his right and forcefully pinned it alongside her other hand. He positioned himself carefully but swiftly, putting his legs slightly in between of her 2 legs so that his privates would be protected. He kept his head at enough distance so that she couldn't headbutt him and break his nose. All in all, Tamari had nowhere to go, no matter how much she thrashed. He raised right leg a little, then gently stamped it on the ground, erecting a special privacy barrier around them. This was one of his father's creation. You can hear the sound from outside, but the sound from within the barrier won't be heard from outside. Also, a pulse of chakra within the barrier won't be able to be felt from outside. Which meant no pulses of chakra could be sent to signal for help. Tricky business to use it with his feet, but thanks to his excellent chakra control, Naruto managed. Tamari was surprised just how swiftly he was able to outmatch her reflexes and pin her to a wall. She felt hurt inside, a feeling of betrayal that was overshadowed by the boiling rage. She even felt slight fear with the way they were positioned. She turned furious eyes onto him, but froze when a wave of killing intent passed over her. Looking up into his eyes, she felt afraid when all she saw was a freezing coldness, absent of the complete warmth they were filled with from earlier. The killing intent was not a problem though, as she just brushed it aside. Gaara repeatedly used it on them, so the effect was null. She tried to project her rage on him. "What are you doing, you son of a, what is Suna planning?" That question stopped her cold, eyes widening. She suddenly had an idea of what this was all about. What? Naruto narrowed his eyes, freezing her with just his stare. She wasn't even thrashing in his arms now. "I don't like repeating myself, so pay attention. What is Suna planning to do?" Tamari tried was so frozen with his stare, the stare that promised a lot of pain if she didn't answer. She hastily sent out a pulse of chakra, hoping someone would sense it and come to her help. "It's useless," he coldly informed her, "I've put up a barrier around us. No one would be able to sense that pulse of chakra. In fact, no one would be able to sense anything, let alone hear." Her hopes of getting helped crashed and shattered. She also noticed that the killing intent had increased substantially, causing her to shake a little. "I can easily deduce that Gaara is an unstable Jinchuriki." "Yes, I know that," he said in response to her wide-eyed look. "No village would dare send an unstable Jinchuriki into another village. I also witnessed your sensei," he sneered at the word, "attacking a fellow Konoha nin with the intent to kill, possibly to prevent some important information from being discovered by us. So I'll ask again, what is Suna planning to do?" Temari couldn't believe that Naruto knew about what Gaara was. Add on to the fact, he had apparently witnessed Baki-sensei attacking a Konoha nin. And, she had been captured by Naruto for information on the invasion. They were already on the cusp of being discovered, so she couldn't see many options. Sighing with resignation, she admitted, "I'm sure you know of the new village, Otogakure." Upon seeing his nod, she continued. A while before the Chunin exams, our father, the Kazekage, was approached by the leader of Otogakure. A man known as Orochimaru. Naruto did not allow Temari to see his shock at that piece of news. He just nodded Temari to continue. "I don't know what they talked about, but father began planning for an invasion a while after their meeting. He informed us that Otogakure would be aiding us during the invasion to cripple Konoha. It was his plan let Gaara loose during the invasion. Since Gaara has full control of his Biju, he would be set free to destroy the village in his unleashed form. Is that right?" Temari nodded, knowing that the invasion had practically failed, now that she had divulged the information. Naruto released a sigh. "I suspected as much." Temari tried to hide the quiver in her voice, "But why did you question me yourself instead of handing me over to the Hokage?" Naruto removed the cold gaze from her, unconsciously making her relax. He looked back at her with a worried gaze. "I don't think you would have liked being subjected to the interrogation department. Trust me, they aren't nice." Temari wholeheartedly agreed with that. She didn't even want to imagine what they would have done to get the information out of her. She looked up, and it was then she realized their positions. Her arms pinned to the wall, Naruto's legs in between hers and bodies pressed to each other's. Oh, and don't forget that their lips were once again separated by mere inches. A blush of massive proportions came onto her face as she locked gazes with Naruto, who realized the same thing as her. His face also matched the same shade of red as hers as he locked his gaze with her. An awkward silence descended upon them, which Temari broke after several moments. "Naruto," she whispered, trying to think of something to say. But Naruto was on a different track from hers. This was his chance, his moment. And he was, in absolutely no way, wasting it. Not to mention, if he did waste this chance, Jiraiya would beat him to within an inch of his life and then some. So he was going to seize it with both of his hands. SSSHHH. He shushed her softly and leant forward, gently capturing her lips. It was the most pleasurable feeling Naruto had ever experienced. Her lips were soft, lingering with the taste of the ramen she ate earlier, which made her taste all the better. Temari went wide-eyed for a moment, but she closed her eyes in pleasure and slowly returned the kiss, molding her lips with Naruto. She knew it was wrong of her. They were enemies on the opposite sides of a war now. They shouldn't be kissing like this, but she couldn't help herself. She had, ever since that chaste kiss from that day, wanted to see for herself how Naruto's lips tasted like. Naruto felt like he was on cloud nine. He decided to take it a little further and bit her lower lip, causing her to gasp. He took advantage of it and pushed his tongue into her mouth, exploring it. He didn't know why, but he wanted to taste more of her, feel more of her. So he released her hands and put them around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Temari was stunned when she felt something wet entering her mouth and exploring it slowly. It took her a moment to realize that it was Naruto's tongue, but instincts were faster than her thinking. So even before she decided what to do, she was already massaging her tongue against Naruto. She couldn't even begin to describe the pleasure she was feeling. When Naruto released her hands, hers automatically went around his neck, pulling him close and further deepening their kiss. She could feel how warm Naruto was, since they both had practically molded their bodies together. They separated for a moment to take a breath, a string of saliva connecting their mouths. Before Naruto could even begin to think whether to do it again or not, Temari had already connected their mouths again, kissing him with more fervor than the previous kiss. Her tongue aggressively invaded his mouth, exploring it and massaging his own tongue with more force than what his tongue did to hers. Her one hand went up to his head, running through his hair. Naruto did not even think, he just enthusiastically returned her actions. His hands began to wander. First, they explored her back, then they explored her sides, each action gaining a pleased moan or sigh from Temari's mouth. He slid his hands lower, letting the primal part of his brain take control. His left hand wrapped around her waist again, while his right slipped lower and gently squeezed her butt. Temari felt like she was in heaven with all the pleasure she was feeling. In the back of her mind, she wondered whether Naruto was just this good or was it the euphoria of the first kiss. Either way, she wasn't complaining. She was about to break their kiss when one of Naruto's hands gently squeezed her butt. Pleasure racked through her body, and she released a loud moan of approval and pleasure. Naruto, taking it as a sign to continue, gently squeezed her other cheek, being rewarded with another moan. Suddenly, he didn't know why, he decided that Temari was standing a bit lower than what he liked. So he bent a little, taking hold of her inner thighs from behind, and hefted her up, pushing her against the wall, causing her to give out a surprised yelp, but she didn't break their kiss. Instead, her arms tightened around his neck while her legs wrapped around him, locking behind his back, their bodies pressing against each other even more. Temari's dress slid up from her thighs a little, exposing a bit of her thighs and skin for Naruto to feel. Naruto repositioned both of his hands on her clothed butt and squeezed, gaining moans of approval from Temari. They kept kissing like that for 5 more minutes, with Naruto occasionally and simultaneously squeezing both of her butt cheeks and gaining moans of pleasure, after which Naruto finally heard the rational part of his brain that was screaming, "You are going too fast, you idiot. Stop." Temari too, finally felt amidst all the pleasure she was feeling that they were going too far too fast and was about to break their kiss and leave, forcibly if she had to, but she didn't need to. Naruto broke their kiss first, looking at her with reluctance. No words needed to be said by either of them. Naruto gently released her, her legs coming to rest on the ground and his hands coming to rest on her waist, while hers moved to his shoulders. Both of them were breathing heavily, tasting each other's breath, trying to come down from the high. "I think we can both agree not to mention this to anyone," Naruto found his voice first. Temari silently nodded as both of them took a step away from each other, both feeling the lack of touch. Temari turned and walked away from Naruto, straightening her dress and smoothing out wrinkles when Naruto stopped her with his voice. "On the day of the finals, I'll see you on the other side," he said in a whisper, but each word was clearly heard by her. A lone tear slipped from her right eye, which she furiously wiped away. She did not care whether he saw her wiping it away or not. "Good night," she hastily whispered, and in a blink of an eye, she was gone. Naruto was still trying to get his thoughts in order. Absently, he raised his foot and stomped softly on the ground, muttering, "Kai," under his breath, releasing the barrier. Only then he gave a reply to the empty surroundings, "Goodbye, Sabaku no Temari." He flashed away after that. He had a simulation to demolish. He realized that he displayed lust on the surface, but deep inside, he knew it. He didn't know how or why, nor did he care. He just knew it. Temari was the one for him. He felt genuine feelings towards her. He didn't know how to describe them. He knew that it was far past the stage. All he knew was that if he got the chance to hold her again, he would be grabbing it. And he would not let go of her that time. Unfortunately, that was the first and the last moment he would ever have with her, for in just 2 days, they would be on the opposite sides of a war, trying to kill each other. And Naruto knew that he won't be able to do it. He won't be able to kill Temari if she came before him. He had lost her, and the chances of being with her again were virtually impossible. Or so he thought. And how was it? Man, I sure was extremely nervous while writing out the kissing scene. I might have overdone it, for they are just 13 and 14-year-old teens. But I know the boundaries, and if anything is good, it's worth overdoing, or so I think in some cases. Anyways, leave your thoughts in reviews. And I will be answering some reviews from the previous chapter. Oh, I almost forgot. Omake. Jiraiya considered himself as the biggest pervert in the world, and he was damn proud of the fact. He was also the legendary Sannin, and perhaps the only remaining sage in the world. He was also a damn good teacher, judging from the notable students he had taught. The 3 war orphans from the village hidden in rain, they must have changed their village by now, for the good. Then there was the Yondaime Hokage. The man was in a league all of his own, and Jiraiya couldn't have been prouder of the shinobi that his student had become. But alas, he died too early, even by shinobi standard. Then there was his latest student. Uzumaki Naruto. Jiraiya had seen many young prodigies in his life. Hell, Konoha had no shortage of them. Uchiha Shisui, Uchiha Itachi, Namikaze Minato, Hitaki Kakashi, his own teammate Orochimaru. But he had never seen one like Naruto. The boy was unbelievably skilled and powerful for someone of his age. He had impressive chakra reserves, excellent chakra control, intelligence to rival his father, all the makings of a prodigy. So Jiraiya promised himself that he would make Naruto a greater shinobi than even his father. But there was one thing that Jiraiya had failed to pass on to all his students. The art of perversion. Jiraiya had been a pervert since his genin days, and had never given up the habit. When he had taken on Minato as an apprentice, Jiraiya had believed that he had finally found the perfect student to pass his perversion onto. Minato certainly had the looks for it, unlike Jiraiya, and he already had loads of fangirls after him just for that. So it killed Jiraiya on the inside when his student acted all polite and modest and refused to take advantage of it. No matter how much he tried to persuade Minato, the guy had an unshakable will and was already fixated on that petite redhead of his. Not that Jiraiya had any problems with it, in fact he thought that Minato had landed an excellent catch. It's just that he couldn't get any research material out of that couple, no matter how hard he tried. It was with these sullen thoughts that Jiraiya wandered around the village, not even noticing how people were whispering with awe that the famed Toad Sage was walking among them right now. So into his thoughts he was that when he actually looked around him, he found himself walking in a fairly empty Konoha street. Very few people were in the street, and they weren't even wandering, instead just gossiping on doorsteps. Jiraiya sighed, hopping onto a roof as he surveyed the village. His thoughts shifted to his meeting with his sensei from last night. Naruto had just saved one of their Jonin from being killed by the Jonin sensei of the Suna team. Sensei had instructed him to remain in the village for the time being, since he was convinced that they would be attacked on the day of the finals. That caused his thoughts to shift onto Naruto. A small smile came onto his face. He had no doubt that the kid would thrash the Hyuga in his match, but immediately getting in the middle of an invasion right after his fight. Jiraiya could not say or think anything for certain. A movement was caught in his peripheral vision, causing him to turn to left. His eyes widened with glee upon seeing the sight, and it was all he could do from hooting and shouting in joy. There was his student, in an alleyway across from him, locking lips with the pretty, blonde genin from Suna. Not just any genin, Jiraiya thought, because he was pretty sure that she was the daughter of the Kazekage. Naruto, the son of the Yondaime Hokage, was kissing Sabaku no Tamari, the daughter of the Yondaime Kazekage. He didn't know whether it was fate or not, but he could care less about it. He wasted no time in whipping out his research notebook, hastily writing into it. Kinky, he giggled quietly, to not alert them of his presence, with a lecherous look on his face after he saw their positions. Naruto had Temari's arms pinned over her head, and both of his legs were in between the female blonde's legs. Oh ho ho. This is good. Go my student, go, he mentally cheered his student on. His joy at finding his student making out in an alleyway increased even further when Naruto released her hands and wrapped them around Temari's waist, pulling her flush against him. Tamari wrapped her own arms around his neck, deepening the kiss further. This is the ultimate jackpot. He is all over her. And it's not just a simple kiss. They are eating each other's mouths. He might be my best student yet, and I haven't even begun teaching him about that. Jiraiya kept his giggle to himself as he gleefully wrote down God knows what in his notebook, not taking his eyes off the couple for a second. He almost broke his cover when he yelled in joy when he saw Naruto grabbing Temari's butt, earning a pleased moan from her. That did it for him. He kept his notebook aside and just watched them with great pleasure. He knew he would remember this forever. He is getting bold, that's for sure. He is doing it as if he has previous experience, but Sensei didn't mention any previous relationships. But judging from her moans, she seems to have no problem with him doing that. I'll just jot this down later. Right now, I will see to the end of this. A trickle of blood fell from his nose as he continued watching them without any shame. He almost resorted to dancing on that rooftop when Naruto picked Tamari up, her legs going on either side of him and locking behind his back as the kiss intensified even more. He is really, really good. I haven't seen something as good as this in years. Oh, my next book will be breaking records. He kept watching, nodding in equal parts of appreciation and glee as Naruto squeezed her butt, earning pleasurable moans, back to back. At this rate, he might even get his cherry popped tonight. He was almost disappointed when the steamy make-out session came to an end, but that feeling was overridden by the immense pride and satisfaction he was feeling for his godson for landing such a girl for himself. He frowned, however, when they seemed to separate with solemn faces. Temari left, but not before shedding a tear at something Naruto said. Naruto didn't make her cry, that he was sure of, because the boy had the same feeling of sadness around him as the girl. It must have been something serious for them to get like that after a session such as that, he thought. No one should look that sad after a hot makeout such as that. Jiraiya knew he wouldn't, for he would jump at the chance. But perhaps his reasoning was flawed, for he hadn't had his first kiss in all 50 years of his life. Oh well, time to cheer, or maybe embarrass, his godson by letting him know of his audience. He finally let the giggle he had been holding in for so long loose. Naruto didn't disappoint him. His keen sense of hearing immediately picked up the giggles that he knew were aimed at him. Jiraiya was laughing on the inside when Naruto's face changed to that of horror. The amusement must have shone through his eyes, for Naruto's face instantly went red in embarrassment and anger. Mainly embarrassment though. Arrow Sennin. He leapt towards Jiraiya like a tiger. But his mind must still be addled by pleasure, for Jiraiya dodged like he wasn't even trying. Jiraiya laughed as he prepared to flicker away. Thanks for the research material, brat. He was gone after that. Naruto fumed as he spread out his senses and easily locked onto Jiraiya. He couldn't believe that his first kiss, more like a makeout session, Kurama so helpfully reminded him, was witnessed by Jiraiya. What was worse was that the man had made research material out of it for his porn books. Like hell he was going to let that happen. Things like that, no matter how awesome and pleasurable, were supposed to remain private.